Chapter 720. The screams and wails that had lasted for a long time had completely disappeared. The silent rosewood street grew colder and colder. The mighty golden river that almost illuminated the night sky of Yuzhou disappeared without a trace. All the people who were carefully observing the situation on the street hid at home as soon as they saw the scene on the street. The silent, cold, and bloody street looked extremely ghastly in the middle of the night, like a ghost town. The street lamps on both sides of the street had been completely smashed by the sword light. In the deep night, the starry sky and the bright moon on the horizon became extremely clear. Under the lonely starlight, several figures walked out of the mansion of number 3 Rosewood Street. They came to the dead body of Qi Mulin and kept silent for a long time. There was no such thing as dying with a remaining grievance. Qi Mulin's eyes were blinded by the sword energy. His eyeballs were nowhere to be found, leaving only 2 horrible blood holes. The city mayor of Xianyuan City, who had attended the meeting of the parliament and dreamed of leading his family to the peak not long ago, had no intact flesh and blood on his body. In the long struggle, countless sword energy had raged on his body. Dense wounds spread all over his body from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet. Every bone in his body had been broken into pieces, and every blood vessel had been completely cut, so the bleeding was extremely uniform. He lay dead on the ground like a piece of rotten meat covered with blood without any support. He looked twisted and desperate. Yi Dongxing watched this scene quietly. The face of the god of army of Zhongzhou State looked a little pale. Yi Dongxing's family was also on Rosewood Street. He was a member of parliament of Zhongzhou State and usually lived in Dragon Lake Park. But when guests came, he would usually return to Rosewood Street and entertain them in his family. After the meeting, Wang Jingxin did not return to Linnan. Instead, she followed Yi Dongxing to the Yi family. In addition to Wang Jingxin, Wang Xingxiao, who had attended Li Honghe's funeral, also stayed in the Yi family for some reason. As Wang Jingxin and Yi Dongxing came back, Fan Tianyin, the Minister of Security of Zhongzhou State, who was also waiting for the result of the meeting, also appeared in the Yi family's mansion and discussed a series of consequences that might be caused by the meeting. Tiannan was extremely important to Zhongzhou State. For Li Tianlan, it was the most important thing. If there was no accident, the rise of Emperor Dong's palace in the future would be based on Tiannan. Li Tianlan would certainly not let go of the power to control Tiannan. It was also because of this that the Southeast group did not agree to let Wang Jingxin go to Tiannan, because it meant a full-scale conflict with Li Tianlan, which was arduous and unrewarding. Now it was Qi Mulin who went there. While the members of the Southeast group breathed a sigh of relief, they also had a general discussion about the possible situation in the future. They all agreed that even if Li Tianlan could suppress Qi Mulin in Tiannan, it would take a lot of effort to do so, which would slow down the development of Emperor Dong's palace. For the Wang family of Beihai, this was undoubtedly a good thing. They just needed to watch the fun. But no one had expected that the excitement would come so quickly, so decisively, and so brutally. Wang Xingxiao immediately noticed the change outside the window. The endless golden light covered the night sky without any warning. It was majestic, thick, stable, and real. Almost in an instant, the entire red sandalwood street was enveloped by that sword light. Tonight, the Qi family that was in the limelight was trembling in the sword light. Trembling in the sword light, despair, and then death. Now the sword light had disappeared. And more than a dozen people in the Qi family had completely disappeared. They disappeared completely. The whole Qi family seemed to have never existed. No one was left. All the people of the Qi family died under that sword light. Yi Dongxing quietly looked at the corpses in front of him, and then at the long street full of blood and minced meat. A strong chill rose from his heart, almost freezing his will. In the countless blood and minced meat he felt only madness. That kind of madness was mixed with brutality and overbearingness. It was unscrupulous, with killing intent and power that was enough to make everyone tremble. Brutal, decisive, straightforward, and cold-blooded. Li Tianlan's image was established overnight with the massacre of the whole family. The corner of Yi Dongxing's mouth twitched and he muttered to himself, "How cruel." I heard that Li Tianlan voluntarily resigned from the position of Marshal of Zhongzhou State and the commander of the Snowdance Corps at the meeting? Wang Xingxiao, who had been silent, suddenly asked. Fan Tianyin was stunned and did not speak. Yi Dongxing took a deep breath, nodded and said in a deep voice, "Yes, and his attitude is very firm." "Then it's a slap in the face." Wang Xingxiao nodded. And it's a deliberate slap in the face. Yi Dongxing smiled bitterly and did not speak, but he agreed with Wang Xingxiao very much in his heart. This time Li Tianlan directly took action. Not only did he destroy the Qi family but he also slapped the face. He slapped the face of the whole Zhongzhou state. In this state Li Tianlan was like a real madman. He dared to risk universal condemnation, acted without scruples and openly trampled on the rules. On the night that Qi Mulan's appointment was approved, the new mayor of Xianyuan City died on Rosewood Street in the most miserable and desperate state. For Zhongzhou state this was equivalent to a slap in the face. This slap was really not light and it could even be said to be bloody. In this matter, Li Tianlan did not intend to save anyone's face at all, including President Li Huaqing and Prime Minister Chen Fangqing. You can send someone to Xianyuan City. Whoever you send I will kill. This was what Li Tianlan expressed and it was very clear. It was Titvet. Li Tianlan was the marshal of Zhongzhou state. If he did not resign in this meeting, his military rank and identity would undoubtedly become one of the bargaining chips when the Qi family was destroyed this time. Gu Xingyun had been proved to be useless. At least in the case that there were chosen ones and half-step chosen ones in the dark world, it was hard for people to have confidence in Gu Xingyun, who was not at the peak of the invincible realm. Li Tianlan's future was the most promising. If Li Tianlan was still the marshal, after he destroyed the Qi family, the high-level officials of Zhongzhou state would inevitably make Li Tianlan pay the price out of anger. And the biggest possibility might be to remove his military rank in the position of the commander of the Snowdance Corps. This was also an acceptable way of retreat for both sides. However, Li Tianlan had long planned to destroy the Qi family, but he took the initiative to resign from the position of marshal in the meeting. What did this mean? He did not want any compromise, or in other words, he could not compromise on this matter. I'm going to kill the people you sent and I don't intend to pay any price. This was the real strength, not even half a step back. He is challenging the dignity of the entire Zhongzhou state. Fan Tianyin suddenly said coldly, Zhongzhou state must pay back this kind of humiliation. How? Wang Xingxiao laughed in a low voice. His voice was extremely complicated. Li Tianlan's future is indeed worth looking forward to. The future chosen one is also very important. But this is not a reason for Li Tianlan to be unscrupulous. Zhongzhou state is the world's most powerful country and has enough confidence. Even if there is no chosen one, Zhongzhou state will not be afraid of anyone. In contrast, in order to cultivate a chosen one, he tramples on the rules of Zhongzhou state unscrupulously. No one can afford such a consequence. Zhongzhou state is willing to tolerate Li Tianlan, but it does not mean that he is indispensable. First the Tang family, then the Qi family. Is he the overall situation of Zhongzhou state? Maybe, but that is after he becomes the chosen one. Now Li Tianlan is not qualified. Fan Tianyin said blandly. This time he trampled on the bottom line of the entire Zhongzhou state. The bottom line is the bottom line because it is a forbidden area that cannot be touched. He took a deep breath and said calmly, the Ministry of State Security will issue a document and directly convict Li Tianlan. His figure was completely shrouded in the darkness. His voice was extremely heavy. Treason. Zhongzhou state will declare war on Emperor Dong's palace today. Li Tianlan can't live and there is no need for Emperor Dong's palace to exist. Without Li Tianlan, Zhongzhou state can still take down Tianan. When saying this, Fan Tianyin's eyes quietly looked at Yi Dongxing. Yi Dongxing was a member of Zhongzhou state, the deputy minister of the army headquarters, and the Minister of the General Staff Department. If they joined hands, it represented the attitude of the Ministry of State Security and the General Staff Department. The joint document issued by the two departments must be discussed at the meeting of the parliament. What Li Tianlan did tonight had gone too far. Li Tianlan had shown his cruel and bloodthirsty brutality. Li Huaqing was bound to give up Li Tianlan. Even if Dongqing Wudi still supported him, few in the giant group dared to continue to play with him. He had gone too far. Even if someone spoke up for him, there was no suitable reason. Moreover, as a dangerous person who dared to kill senior officials of Zhongzhou state at will, who did not want him to die quickly. Once the Ministry of State Security and the General Staff Department issued a joint document, Li Tianlan would inevitably be given up by Zhongzhou state. Fan Tianyin was full of confidence. However, he only saw a bitter smile on Yi Dongxing's face. because he had been paying attention to Wang Xingxiao's expression and saw the complicated helplessness on Wang Xingxiao's face. It's not easy to deal with this, Yi Dongxing said slowly. There's nothing difficult about it. Fan Tianyin said flatly, this is Zhongzhou State. There are always some rules that can't be broken. Otherwise, the whole system will be shaken, which is very dangerous. Yes, Uncle Fan is right. Wang Xingxiao said softly, there are always some rules that can't be trampled. The bitter smile on Yi Dongxing's face became more and more obvious. He took a deep breath, slowly turned around and said in a deep voice, let's go back first. Anger, shame, resentment, killing intent and unwillingness. All of these emotions were constantly condensing in his heart. His face was twisted and he saw stars in front of his eyes. Blood kept pouring out of his body. In the darkness of the night, he staggered to the front of an old-fashioned courtyard house. He reached out and slammed on the door. In the dead of night, there was a response in the courtyard almost immediately. It was vigilant and piercingly cold. Who is it? It's me. The angry, almost deformed voice seemed to be squeezed out from his teeth. But this voice was also very familiar to those who were familiar with him. In the rapid footsteps, the gate of the courtyard was pulled open. His figure swayed and he almost fell. Your Highness. It was a man in his 30s who opened the door. He didn't expect the scene in front of him at all. In great shock, he subconsciously held the bloody body. What's going on? Who dares to attack your Highness in Yuzhou? The man suddenly raised his eyebrows, angry and fierce. Go in and talk. Gu Xingyun took a deep breath, barely stabilized his body and walked into the courtyard. The man who opened the door arranged Gu Xingyun into his bedroom and hurriedly went to find the medicine box. His expression was a mixture of anger and worry, which was very real. Gu Xingyun was a little moved. This was his confidant who had followed him for many years. He was Major General Yang Xiaojie, the executive deputy director of the Yuzhou Special Operations Bureau. Gu Xingyun had been staying in Yuzhou for many years and had cultivated a great force. Yang Xiaojie's position might not be the highest, but at the most critical moment, Gu Xingyun first thought of him. Xiaojie, don't be so busy. It's not as serious as you think. Gu Xingyun took a deep breath and said in a low voice, prepare a private plane for me. I'll go back to Kunlun City overnight. I'll do it right away. Yang Xiaojie paused and put all the medicine he found in front of Gu Xingyun. Then he took out his mobile phone and began to arrange the private plane without hesitation. He didn't even ask why Gu Xingyun was in such a hurry. In less than 3 minutes, Yang Xiaojie's order came back. He looked at his mobile phone and whispered, Your Highness, the helicopter will arrive in half an hour. Gu Xingyun nodded. After a long silence, he whispered, It's Li Tianlan. Yang Xiaojie suddenly opened his eyes and said angrily, He dares to attack you in Yuzhou? Does he want to die? Gu Xingyun was seriously injured now. Li Tianlan's series of achievements showed that he was powerful now. It was not surprising that Gu Xingyun was no match for Li Tianlan. What surprised him was that Li Tianlan dared to attack Gu Xingyun in Yuzhou. Who gave him the courage? Not only to me. Gu Xingyun's expression was a little ferocious. The Qi family is finished. That little bastard directly attacked the Qi family and forced me to retreat. Now the Qi family should have been destroyed. This bastard, he deserves to die. Yang Xiaojie's face changed dramatically, and his eyes flashed with killing intent. When old Li was in the camp, he shouldn't have let them live. Now there will be endless troubles. Yes. Gu Xingyun took a deep breath and lit a cigarette. His face was a little gloomy. Not only at that time but in recent years. Xiaojie, in recent years I missed too many opportunities. At this moment Gu Xingyun really regretted it. The Li family had stayed in the border camp for more than 20 years. Gu Xingyun had tried every means to weaken the Li family's power and make the people in the camp less and less, but he had never thought of destroying the Li family once and for all. Not only in the past 20 years but also in the last 3 years he had too many opportunities. If he had killed Li Tianlan at the first time when he learned that Li Tianlan came to the secular world, he might have encountered a lot of trouble. But compared to now, those troubles were nothing at all. Zhongzhou State would not completely fall out with him because of a young man with potential. But now, Gu Xingyun's mouth twitched. What's your plan now, Your Highness? Yang Xiaojie did not comfort Gu Xingyun. He knew him very well and Gu Xingyun did not need any comfort. No plan. Gu Xingyun shook his head. Now you don't have to care about anything. Xiaojia Yuzhou Special Operations Bureau, you have to take good care of yourself in the future. I want to return to Kunlun City as soon as possible. Before I recover, even if Kunlun City is destroyed, I will not show up again. When I recover. There was a flash of killing intent in his eyes. He had now seen the way to the peak of the invincible realm. As long as his injury recovered, he would definitely break through again and go straight to the peak of the invincible realm. He had decided that at that time he would take action at all costs, abandon all concerns, abandon all rules, and directly kill Li Tianlan. As long as Li Tianlan was killed and he resisted all the influences, Kunlun City could be completely at ease in the future. Gu Xingyun bit off the cigarette butt and was silent for a long time. Then he suddenly said, "Hurry me up. I want to go back as soon as possible. The sooner the better." Compared with Li Tianlan, who was making progress and getting stronger every day, his injury really could not be delayed any longer. It was a race against time. The hidden dragon sea was about to usher in the dawn. At the end of the night, Li Huaqing had breakfast. He had not rested for more than a day and a night, but he did not feel sleepy at all. For some reason, Li Huaqing always felt a little uneasy. After thinking for a long time, he was sure that the problem was with Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan said that he was going to the Qi family. Li Huaqing did not know what he was going to do, but since he left the hidden dragon sea, Li Huaqing had always been a little uneasy. After eating breakfast tastelessly, Li Huaqing sat in the study and dealt with a few documents. Just as he was about to make himself a cup of tea, the phone suddenly rang. Li Huaqing's eyebrows twitched. He grabbed the phone and said hello in a steady voice. "President, this is Chen Fangqing. Do you have time? There is an emergency and I need to communicate with you." Li Huaqing did not hesitate and said with a smile, "Then ask the Prime Minister to come over." Chen Fangqing answered in a hurry and hung up the phone directly. The moment the phone was hung up, the door of the study was suddenly pushed open. The secretary who had been with Li Huaqing for many years almost rushed in, and his voice became a little sharp. "President." Li Huaqing looked up in amazement, but his heart sank slightly. He knew his secretary very well. Something big must have happened since he was so anxious. "What's the matter?" Li Huaqing took a deep breath and asked in a deep voice. The Qi family is finished." The secretary's voice was filled with countless emotions. "Qi Mulan is dead?" Li Huaqing was shocked. Not only Qi Mulan but all the people of the Qi family are dead. Just now, nearly 20 people of the Qi family, including the elderly, children and women including Qi Mulan, all died without a whole body. The secretary's voice was filled with obvious horror. As Li Huaqing's secretary, his rank was the same as Qi Mulan's. He could be said to be a real high-ranking official. He had seen too many so-called big events, but none of them was as shocking as this. Li Huaqing's body suddenly shook and he held the table. He tried to digest this joy. After a while, he said in a low voice, "Who is it? Who else can it be? It's Li Tianlan." Before the secretary spoke, Chen Fangqing's voice had sounded. He strode into the study, and his voice seemed to contain endless thunder with undisguised anger. "Zhongzhou State has just approved Qi Mulan's appointment, but his Qi family was directly exterminated. What does Li Tianlan want to do? What does he want to do? Does he still care about Zhongzhou State? Does he care about the parliament of Zhongzhou State? Even if Qi Mulan is not the mayor of Xianyuan City, he is still the deputy minister of the Ministry of Security. He is lawless, simply lawless." Li Huaqing's heart had sunk to the bottom. His eyes became incomparably cold and determined in an instant. "Is there any information on the scene?" he asked directly. "There is no useful information." Chen Fangqing took out a flash drive and handed it to Li Huaqing. It was a video taken by the surveillance at the time of the incident. The video was presented on the big screen in the study. A little golden light first appeared on the quiet Rosewood Street. The extremely quiet and very real golden light kept expanding at the end of the street, like a rising sun. The seemingly warm light kept extending, almost covering a 3-kilometer street in the blink of an eye. Gu Xingyun's angry voice sounded, but there was no response in the video. Then came the screams and roars of the Qi family. The scalp-numbing wailing spread directly from the villa to the street. There was only golden light, only wailing and nothing else on the screen. Li Huaqing was silent for a long time before he slowly said, "There is no Li Tianlan?" There is no him on the screen, but it doesn't mean that he didn't do it. These golden lights are all sword qi. How many swordsmanship masters have reached this level of strength? Not to mention Zhou State, even in today's dark world. Who else can it be except Li Tianlan? Qin Fangqing forcibly suppressed his inner anger, and his voice was extremely cold. Li Huaqing also agreed with this view. He silently handed Qin Fangqing a cigarette and calmly said, "What do you want to do?" Li Tianlan is a talent, even can be said to be a genius. Qin Fangqing took a deep drag on the cigarette and said lightly, "But there are advantages and disadvantages to a talented person. It depends on how he conducts himself. But in a series of performances of Li Tianlan, I don't see how his talent will benefit Zhou State. On the contrary, this kind of person who tramples the rules at will is the most dangerous. Zhou State cannot have a heavenly son, but it can't have a lawless heavenly son." Qin Fangqing had obviously thought it through, so he answered without hesitation. Li Huaqing slightly raised his eyebrows and said, "So? Give up Li Tianlan and destroy Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan will be sentenced to death for treason." Qin Fangqing's tone was extremely firm. Li Huaqing frowned more and more, and it was not easy for him to make a decision. He was not entangled in things like benevolence and righteousness. Li Tianlan destroyed the Qi family, which was too fast and too simple. Even Li Huaqing felt the kind of danger that made him uneasy at this time. This kind of danger came from Li Tianlan. The first time he heard the news, he had already considered whether it was the right decision to cooperate with Li Tianlan. Qin Fangqing was right. Zhou State could not have a heavenly son, but it really could not have a lawless lunatic. Zhou State could not afford such a lunatic. Give up Li Tianlan. Li Huaqing hesitated for a moment and then made up his mind. What kind of people were he and Qin Fangqing? One was the president and the other was the prime minister. They were the two most powerful people in Zhou State. At the critical moment there would be no hesitation at all. Today Li Tianlan dared to kill a senior official at the level of deputy governor. No matter how much Li Huaqing appreciated Li Tianlan, he could not let him continue to kill a senator. Give up Li Tianlan and destroy Emperor Dong's palace. He narrowed his eyes and suddenly said, "What about the giant group?" There is no need to estimate the giant group. Li Tianlan is a lunatic. He does make contributions to Zhou State, but what I see is only greater harm. Today Qi Mulan died and tomorrow it may even be you and me. Anyone who may hurt his interests should be frightened. If he enters the invincible realm or even becomes a heavenly son, won't the whole Zhou State have to act according to his will? Such a thing is not what the giant group wants to see. Most of their forces will support us. The only one we need to worry about is Minister Dongqing. Qin Fangqing said calmly. Li Huaqing thought seriously and said lightly, "Go on." It's simple. In the name of the parliament and the cabinet, announce that Li Tianlan has committed treason. The 9 directors must sign. Minister Dongqing can refuse to sign, but he must deal with Li Tianlan personally. Otherwise he will also be punished for treason. Qin Fangqing said without hesitation. Li Huaqing's heart suddenly shook and he said in a low voice, "Dongqing Wudi is a director of Zhou State." There was one thing he didn't say. In today's sensitive situation, Dongqing Wudi was the actual helmsman of the military, and his status might not be worse than Qin Fangqing, the prime minister. Everyone has the possibility of treason, and no one can violate the laws of Zhou State. Qin Fangqing was unmoved and said, "Dongqing Wudi can't protect Li Tianlan, and no one can protect Li Tianlan." Li Huaqing took a deep breath. This time he did not make a clear statement. He could accept giving up Li Tianlan because Li Tianlan touched the bottom line of the whole Zhou State. The extermination of the Qi family was equivalent to Li Tianlan slapping the parliament of Zhou State in the face. It was bloody and powerful. The parliament of Zhou State would naturally be furious after being dizzy. Giving up Li Tianlan was acceptable to most people. But giving up the giant group would have too much influence. Li Huaqing rubbed his forehead to relieve his physical fatigue. He was silent for a full 5 minutes and then he said in a low voice, "Did the members of parliament leave last night?" "Probably not. They should all be resting now." Qin Fangqing shook his head. In this case, Li Huaqing took a deep breath and said decisively, "Hold another plenary meeting of the parliament. On this matter, everyone needs to make their attitudes clear." "What about Li Tianlan?" Qin Fangqing followed up with a question. "Arrest him." Without any hesitation, Li Huaqing said directly in a cold tone and expressionless face. Qin Fangqing nodded. He was not surprised by Li Huaqing's attitude. Li Tianlan's madness was beyond everyone's expectation. It was inevitable for Li Huaqing to give up Li Tianlan. Not only Li Huaqing but also the academics, the Giant Group, the Prince Group, the Special Warfare Group, the Southeast Group and the North Group would not support Li Tianlan. Such a madman who dared to kill high-ranking officials and even exterminate the whole family could not be forgiven in any country in the world. This was the most basic bottom line and rule. If he survived this time when he grew up in the future, this so-called heavenly son might have become a knife hanging over everyone's head before he shocked the dark world. At that time he could kill whoever he wanted and the whole Xianxia state would be ruled under his shadow for decades. Killing Qi Mulan was a small matter, but Li Tianlan's approach was tantamount to challenging the system of the whole Xianxia state. No one could allow such a thing to happen. So Li Tianlan was bound to die. At the foot of Green Mountain, the Bai family manor, Li Tianlan did not return to Prince Yang's mansion. After leaving Rosewood Street he went directly to the Bai family manor. If he was right when the news got out, Dongqing Wudi and Bai Zhanfeng would meet him. However, even Li Tianlan did not expect that Dongqing Wudi's reaction would be so intense. As soon as he walked near the Bai family manor, Dongqing Wudi's phone call came directly. Li Tianlan silently took out his mobile phone, pressed the answer button and said hello. Where are you? Dongqing Wudi was not polite at all, and his loud voice was full of anger that could not be concealed. I'll be at the gate of the manor right now. Li Tianlan smiled. Minister, I smile? You're still in the mood to smile? Bastard minister? What minister? My daughter has been given to you and you still call me minister? Minister? Bastard, look what you've done. Get in here right now, Wudi. On the phone, Bai Zhanfeng's voice rang. Dongqing Wudi panted heavily. Seeing that Li Tianlan did not make a sound, he suddenly became furious again. The roar of the minister of the army headquarters almost rang through the mountains and fields through the phone. Where is he? Bastard, get over here right now. If you dare to run, I'll beat you to death today. Don't dawdle, hurry up. Li Tianlan's ears were buzzing and he subconsciously took the phone away. It seemed that since the first contact, Dongqing Wudi had been very kind, and Li Tianlan was also very polite to him. But now this sudden scolding did not make Li Tianlan feel any discomfort. On the contrary, he even felt a little close and moved. Dongqing Wudi's anger was genuine. Perhaps he didn't know it himself, but his mood reflected his attitude. Li Tianlan knew what he had done tonight. He had openly trampled on the bottom line and face of Xianxia state. But even at this time, Dongqing Wudi and Bai Zhanfeng still did not intend to give up on him. Li Tianlan stood at the gate of the manor, took a deep breath, calmed down and went straight into the manor. Standing in front of the villa in the manor, he knocked on the door. Bai Qingzhao, the Deputy Secretary General of the Army Headquarters, opened the door in person. He glared at Li Tianlan and seemed to want to say something. Finally, he lowered his voice and said, "Go in. Don't confront your father. Behave yourself." My father? Li Tianlan looked stunned. Rushi's father? If not your father, then what is he? Bai Qingzhao was a little annoyed. Hurry up and go in. Don't talk nonsense. I'm Rushi's uncle and you have to call me uncle too. Bai Qingzhao pulled him into the living room. Dongqing Wudi sat in the living room and his face was as black as the bottom of a pot. The moment he saw Li Tianlan, he stood up directly and seemed to want to rush over, but then he felt something wrong. He picked up a teacup and wanted to smash it, but when the teacup felt the warm tea, he put it back, picked up a pillow and threw it directly at Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan did not dodge and let the pillow fall on him. It did not hurt or itch. Minister. Li Tianlan coughed and said, Secretary Bai. Bai Zhanfeng nodded with a smile. Dongqing Wudi's temper seemed to have been completely ignited. You still have the face to talk? Get over here and stand. Bastard, I'll beat you to death today. Minister, don't be angry. Calm down and have a cigarette. Li Tianlan scratched his head and seemed to want to flatter him. But he really couldn't put on a cheeky smile, so the action of taking out the cigarette gave people the feeling that he was taking out a gun, hard and very serious. The corners of the Bai family's mouth kept twitching and they were speechless. Dongqing Wudi took the cigarette dully and glared at Li Tianlan. It seemed that he wanted to throw the cigarette in his face, but in the end he silently lit it. He suppressed his inner anger, clenched his fists and said dully, "Your Aunt Bai will be here soon. Let's discuss how to deal with this matter." "There's nothing to worry about," Li Tianlan said softly. "Minister, don't worry. It's okay." "Do you know what you did tonight?" Dongqing Wudi looked at Li Tianlan coldly and said in a deep voice, "How dare you say it's okay?" Seeing that Dongqing Wudi was about to get angry again, Bai Zhanfeng frowned and said, "Wudi, listen to what Tianlan has to say first. What's the hurry?" Dongqing Wudi bit his cheek hard and said coldly with a dark face, "Say it." Bai Zhanfeng lit a cigarette with a smile and looked at Li Tianlan. As the speaker of Yuzhou, he naturally knew how serious this matter was. At least he could not see any turning point, but he also believed in Li Tianlan. Because of Li Tianlan's attitude towards the Dongqing clan and the giant group. The giant group had always been impeccable to Li Tianlan and even supported him at all costs. But in the face of this support, Li Tianlan showed extreme hesitation several times. This hesitation was not pretentious but a kind of hesitation. Such hesitation, to be specific, was that Li Tianlan was afraid that he could not bear the future of the giant group. This was undoubtedly Li Tianlan's sense of responsibility. Bai Zhanfeng believed that Li Tianlan with such a sense of responsibility might be crazy, but after he had borne the future of the giant group, no matter how crazy he would not lead the giant group into a desperate situation. "I know." Li Tianlan nodded. "I just wiped out the Qi family." "Just." Dongqing Wudi suddenly became angry. "What level is Qi Mulan at? How many people do you think there are at this level in the whole Zhongzhou state? Not to mention him, it will be a big trouble for you to kill a person at a lower level than him. Have you figured out the situation? This is the most basic bottom line of the Zhongzhou state system. Even if I risk my life this time, it will be hard for me to protect you, especially if you use that method to kill a family." Dongqing Wudi gritted his teeth hard and his chest kept rising and falling. When the meeting was adjourned, Dongqing Wudi knew that Li Tianlan wanted to establish his power, but he did not expect it to be in such a way. This way was indeed a way to establish his power. But the key was, how could Li Tianlan gain a foothold in the future? Boy, in any country the most basic rules and bottom lines of a system cannot be trampled, no matter who he is. Do you understand? "I understand." Li Tianlan nodded with a smile. "So this time there will be no problem." "Why?" Dongqing Wudi raised his eyebrows. "Because there are always some rules that cannot be trampled," Li Tianlan said quietly. Chapter 721. There were always some rules that couldn't be trampled. When he said this, Li Tianlan's expression was unusually calm and full of confidence. Dongqing Wudi paused for a moment and looked at Bai Zhanfeng. They both saw doubt in each other's eyes. The fact that Li Tianlan could say this proved that he was very sober. At least he was not insane as the outside world thought. But this sentence could have nailed Li Tianlan to death. Now, judging from his tone, it turned out that it was also what he was relying on. Where did this confidence come from? "Are you sure you can get out of this unscathed?" Dongqing Wudi asked in a deep voice after taking a deep breath and gradually calming down from his manic state. When he received the news that the Qi family had been exterminated, Dongqing Wudi directly overturned the table in his office. Li Tianlan's current status was enough to make people look at him directly. Dongqing Wudi understood that he wanted to establish his prestige, but there were many ways to do so. In his opinion, Li Tianlan chose the most irrational way. The sword light that filled the whole street almost clearly showed the identity of the perpetrator. At least in today's Zhongzhou state, only Li Tianlan could have such abundant sword energy. There was no shadow of Li Tianlan in the video, but this didn't prove anything at all. The most important thing was that Li Tianlan dared to do this, and obviously he didn't intend to hide anything. He participated in the meeting of the Zhongzhou State Parliament. After the meeting, he crushed the Qi family in a grand manner and wiped out the Qi family. This slap made the whole Zhongzhou state bloody and dizzy. Dongqing Wudi rushed to the Bai family's manor as soon as possible and scolded Li Tianlan along the way. At the same time, he called all the important figures of the giant group urgently, ready to clean up Li Tianlan's mess, and even ready to let Li Tianlan leave Zhongzhou state temporarily. In this matter, Dongqing Wudi saw no way out for Li Tianlan. Qi Mulan's life or death was not important. What mattered was that his appointment represented the will of Zhongzhou state, which was the most basic bottom line and principle that could not be trampled. To say the least, even if Qi Mulan went to Tianan, Li Tianlan could take action and make up a reason to frame someone else. It would be much better than him killing the whole Qi family on Rosewood Street. Li Tianlan certainly understood this, but he still did it. He did it blatantly and scrupulously and without any taboo. He killed so many people that the whole Rosewood Street was covered with blood and mutilated corpses. Since he could do this, he was not afraid of Xianxia State's suspicion at all. He even hoped that Xianxia State would confirm that he did it. Establishing dominance? Once the news got out, Li Tianlan would indeed establish his prestige. But in this matter, how could Li Tianlan escape unscathed? Of course. Meeting Dongqing Wudi's gaze, Li Tianlan nodded calmly. Tell me your thoughts. Be more specific. Dongqing Wudi said in a deep voice. Li Tianlan lit a cigarette unhurriedly. His eyes were a little dazed. Minister, you should know how Tianan came to be, right? Of course I know. Dongqing Wudi grunted. Then how did it come about? Li Tianlan asked seriously. More than 3 years ago, the 5 dark forces united with Annan State to invade the border of Xianxia State. Senior Li raised the flag of Xianxia State on the border front and fought bloody battles with the elites of the Li family on the border. They inflicted heavy losses on the 5 dark forces and the rebel army of Annan State. The Thunderbolt Battalion of the Border Control Corps and the Blood Battalion jointly broke through and went straight into the territory of Annan State, which is today's Tianan. Dongqing Wudi said slowly. Li Tianlan said, that's the most complete statement. How did Annan come about? In the most official statement, the border conflict broke out more than 3 years ago. Dongqing Wudi, the god of massacre of Xianxia State, led the Border Control Corps to beat the 5 forces. And finally went deep into Annan State to help Annan put down the rebellion. Finally they fought their way out of Tianan. In this story, the role of Xianxia State was a friend of Annan State. They entered Annan State to help Annan put down the rebellion. Another, the most critical point was that there was no report on the achievements of the Li family and the deeds of Li Honghe. But this was crucial. If Li Honghe and the elites of the Li family hadn't severely damaged the power of the 5 forces and the rebel army, although Dongqing Wudi could have defeated the enemy at that time, it would have been difficult for him to enter the territory of Annan State in the first place. However, this point had been covered up by Xianxia State for more than 3 years. According to this statement, the conquest of Tianan has the credit of the minister and part of the credit of the Li family, right? Li Tianlan asked. Dongqing Wudi said, he seemed to be thinking about something. If the Li family is still at its peak and conquered Tianan with the Dongqing clan, how should we divide it? Li Tianlan asked again. Dongqing Wudi was stunned. Before he could answer, Li Tianlan's voice had sounded, no need to divide it. I'm the young master of the Li family, but I'm also the son-in-law of the Dongqing clan. The minister has only 2 daughters. Brother-in-law is now developing in the political circle, so can the Tianan that you and the Li family conquered together be mine? Of course. Dongqing Wudi said without hesitation, it's a matter of course. He hesitated and continued, but it can also be regarded as Xianxia State's. But Xianxia State can't admit it now. Li Tianlan said blandly, and I admit it. I've always admitted that Tianan is mine and a part of Xianxia State. Bai Zhanfang, who had been silent, suddenly brightened his eyes for a moment. The content of this sentence was really familiar. Xianxia State has acquiesced to the development of Emperor Dong's palace in Tianan. The future of the Freedom Corps is also to join Emperor Dong's palace. Emperor Dong's palace will control Tianan and announce its surrender to Xianxia State. This is part of Xianxia State's plan. In this plan, I want to ask the directors of Xianxia State, what position do they put me in? Dongqing Wudi's eyes also brightened slightly. To put it bluntly, Tianan can now be regarded as my property. It doesn't belong to Xianxia State yet. As long as I have the ability, this is my private property. I set up Xianyuan City in my private territory and reported it to the parliament. I'm giving them face, but they are shameless. It's serious that I killed Qi Mulan. Maybe I touched some bottom line, but obviously some people still don't know what they have touched. I elected a mayor in my private territory. Outside Xianxia State, where do they get the right to tell me what to do? Shameless. Li Tianlan's voice was unusually cold and overbearing. So, Dongqing Wudi finally understood. At this moment his body was completely relaxed. The first mayor of Xianyuan City can only be Ning Qiancheng. Whether it's Qi Mulin or Wang Jingxin, once this precedent is set, it's very dangerous. So now the person who needs to worry the most is not me. How to deal with this matter has nothing to do with me. Li Tianlan said lightly, I just killed some people. Bai Zhanfeng looked at Li Tianlan for a long time. There was some appreciation in his eyes and some emotion in them. Tianlan, if you are willing to go into politics, your future may not be worse than that in Tianan. Li Tianlan smiled and shook his head. The twists and turns in officialdom were too complicated. If he really limited himself to fighting with those old foxes in Zhou State in a certain field, Li Tianlan didn't think he could gain any advantage. He undoubtedly couldn't see the delicate joints clearly. He just accurately grasped some of the most basic principles. The president, Dongqing Wudi, hesitated for a moment. The rift has existed for a long time and it has always existed. The premise of cooperation is that both sides benefit. This is the only premise. If this premise doesn't exist, cooperation is naturally unnecessary. The key depends on how the president chooses. I may owe the academics, but we don't owe the academics. Li Tianlan said calmly. For more than 3 years, not only the giant group had been cooperating with the academics, but also the Samsara Palace had been cooperating with the academics. Sai City, which Li Tianlan could best represent, was also getting closer and closer to the academics. With these three forces, the academics had developed extremely strongly in recent years. They might have helped Li Tianlan, but Li Tianlan had also given them enough reports. In politics there was no such thing as owing them. The only possibility for the cooperation between the two forces was interests. If Li Huaqing thought that the cooperation between the two sides was no longer suitable to continue, then it was almost time to shed all pretenses of cordiality. Friends or enemies in the treacherous general trend were always changing. Zhou State is expected to hold another plenary session of the parliament. I didn't show up on Rosewood Street to give them a fig leaf. But I will tell them personally that I killed Qi Mulin and his family, and whoever is dissatisfied just hold it in. This matter won't end so easily. Bai Qingzhao suddenly said. It's not difficult to get out unscathed. It's nothing more than a matter of taking a break for a while. Dongqing Wudi looked at Li Tianlan with soft eyes. He had just lost his composure and shouted abuse, but it didn't alienate them. Instead it made them more intimate. Boy, it's good to take a break for a while. It's time to calm down. Li Tianlan bowed slightly and said softly, I'm mentally prepared. Number 3 Rosewood Street. The lights were still on in the Yi family's villa. The night was still dark, but lights were flashing everywhere on the street. Groups of police cars arrived at the villa as soon as possible. They cordoned off the scene and investigated and collected evidence. It was busy and lively. It was quiet in the living room. 15 minutes ago, Vice President Wang Qinyun of Zhou State and Director of the Ministry of Supervision of Zhou State Ji Wenzhang came at the same time. They followed Yi Dongxing. Wang Xingxiao and Fan Tianin entered the study together. Wang Jingxin didn't go over. He just sat in the living room and didn't even care about what was being discussed in the study at this time. Ji Wenzhang and Wang Qinyun were invited by Wang Xingxiao. These two were now the top leaders of the Southeast group. As juniors, Wang Xingxiao should take the initiative to visit them, but he didn't do so. At such a sensitive time, the heir of the Wang family of Beihai didn't go to Hidden Dragon Sea or even to Dragon Lake Park where Yi Dongxing lived. Instead he chose to meet them at the Yi family, which was enough to explain the problem. Ji Wenzhang and Wang Qinyun still arrived on time, which also explained the problem. If it were in the past, Wang Jingxin could naturally detect that something was wrong, but now he didn't pay any attention to it. His mind was full of the blood flowing on Rosewood Street and Qi Mulin's body. He held the cup with both hands and the warm tea kept swirling in the cup, causing ripples after ripples, just like Wang Jingxin's mood. His face was pale and his eyes were full of fear and relief. To be honest, he was really scared by Li Tianlan. Apart from Qi Mulin, there were almost no complete corpses of the Qi family. The hellish and miserable scene was still vivid in Wang Jingxin's mind. The more Wang Jingxin didn't want to recall it, the clearer the scene in her mind was. This sense of immersion was too strong, so strong that his body was trembling slightly. Li Tianlan was a madman. After tonight's events, anyone could have confirmed this. Wang Jingxin was completely sure that if the person elected as the new mayor of Xianyuan City tonight was him instead of Qi Mulin, then number 3 Rosewood Street, Shu Lin, and the branch family of the Wang family of Beihai that belonged to Wang Jingxin would almost be exterminated by Li Tianlan. Qi Mulan's ending would be his ending. Now Li Tianlan really had no scruples. The Wang family of Beihai Kunlun City? Everything in his eyes was exactly the same. At this moment Wang Jingxin's heart was full of fear, but also with the joy of surviving a disaster and a little anger. As a candidate to compete with Qi Mulan for the mayor of Xianyuan City, Qi Mulan's tragic death was bound to have an impact on Wang Jingxin, and the extent of the impact depended on Li Tianlan's ending. If Li Tianlan could get out of this storm unscathed, his prestige in Lin, and was bound to suffer a fatal blow. He and Qi Mulan were pushed out together. No matter what the reason was, at least on the surface they were at the same level. It was a level, not a level. That was to say, if Li Tianlan could get out unscathed after killing Qi Mulan, then it would not be a problem for him to kill Wang Jingxin. Lin, and was the Li family's territory, Li Tianlan's territory. In Li Tianlan's territory, following Wang Jingxin and going against the Li family? After the Qi family was exterminated, if Li Tianlan could be safe and sound, there would really not be many people who dared to continue to follow Wang Jingxin. In other words, he could not stay in Lin, and any longer. He did not lose to Zhou Xian, but was forced to leave by Li Tianlan. Wang Jingxin put down the teacup, gritted his teeth, hesitated, took out his mobile phone and began to dial. When the number was dialed halfway, footsteps were heard upstairs. Wan Qingyun, Ji Wenzhang, Yi Dongxing, Wang Xingxiao, Fan Tianin, and everyone else came down from upstairs with solemn expressions. The 2 council giants did not say much, just nodded to Wang Jingxin and then quickly went out. Yi Dongxing followed them closely. Wang Jingxin looked at the backs of these people and his eyes were a little confused. The president decided to hold another plenary meeting of the parliament, and they have to go there as soon as possible. Wang Xingxiao explained. Wang Jingxin, who was confused, said, and did not say much. Wang Xingxiao turned to look at Fan Tianin, hesitated and said slowly, "Uncle Fan, you must be careful." "Don't worry, I understand." Fan Tianin nodded and patted Wang Xingxiao on the shoulder. "You talk first, I'll arrange it." "Be careful of what? Where is Minister Fan going?" Wang Jingxin finally noticed that something was wrong and asked in surprise. Fan Tianin hurried out and did not answer the question. Wang Xingxiao was silent for a while and then slowly said, "Zhongzhou State has issued a document." Wang Jingxin raised his eyebrows. Wang Xingxiao's usually calm and gentle expression suddenly became a little gloomy. The Zhongzhou State Parliament, the Cabinet, the Army Headquarters and Kunlun City jointly issued a document defining Li Tianlan as an important suspect in the Qi family's massacre. 10 minutes ago, the official document has been sent to the Ministry of State Security and even to various agencies in Yuzhou. Li Huaqing personally signed the order asking the Ministry of State Security, the General Staff Headquarters Kunlun City, the Special Operations Bureau of Yuzhou, the Shadow Sect and various special warfare organizations in Yuzhou to send people to arrest Li Tianlan. The Ministry of State Security is a little late, and it is estimated that the people of the Special Operations Bureau of Yuzhou are already on the way. So fast. Wang Jingxin was suddenly shocked and stood up directly. He could not believe that Zhongzhou State's attitude would be so resolute this time. In less than a few hours after the incident, they directly made a decision to arrest Li Tianlan. However, although it was an arrest, Zhongzhou State had not officially convicted Li Tianlan. It just said that he was a major suspect in the Qi family's massacre. For a moment, Wang Jingxin could not figure out whether this major suspect was to leave room for compromise or to stabilize Li Tianlan first. With the current power of Yuzhou, especially the power sent to arrest Li Tianlan, it seemed difficult to keep Li Tianlan. But if Li Tianlan resisted, it would be a real treason. Zhongzhou State's territory of tens of millions of square kilometers was under the feet of the emperor. No matter how invincible Li Tianlan was, how many people could he kill? Moreover, he was now only a suspect, not a criminal. With this leeway, the possibility of Li Tianlan resisting was much smaller. In this way, the possibility of temporarily stabilizing Li Tianlan was the highest. Is Zhongzhou State really going to take action? Wang Jingxin could not believe it. He knew that if Li Tianlan really decided to resist, he alone could bring irreparable heavy losses to Zhongzhou State. Zhongzhou State might win, but it would not be easy. How could Li Huaqing not know the problem that even he knew? But now they actually dared to take action. They didn't even prepare anything in advance and directly took action. If this was to test Li Tianlan's final attitude, the risk was a little too big. The president said that it's better to have a short pain than a long one. Zhongzhou State does not allow any cancer to exist. The whole of Zhongzhou State should be healthy, positive, and united. Any cancer that threatens Zhongzhou State must be eliminated, even if it's scraping the bones to cure the poison or giving strong medicine to a serious disease. It's better to have a short pain than a long one. Wang Xingxiao sneered. Wang Jingxin nodded subconsciously and seemed to agree with Li Huaqing. But, wait. No, he carefully recalled what Wang Xingxiao said. Looking at the sneer on his face, his whole face suddenly changed. Wang Jingxin sucked in a breath of cold air and said in disbelief. The drunkard has an ulterior motive. Wang Xingxiao's expression became more and more gloomy. He looked at the night sky outside the window and was silent for a long time. Then he sighed softly. A storm is coming. Chapter 722. Wang Jingxin's expression was stiff. He sat on the sofa and kept silent for a long time. A storm was coming and dark clouds were hanging over the city. It was an eventful time. Combined with Li Huaqing's statement, no matter how dull his brain was, he now understood why Wan Qingyun and Ji Wenzhang had just met Wang Xingxiao here. The more he thought about it, the more meaningful it was. As the president of Zhongzhou State, his every move and every word had to be careful. It was no exaggeration to say that every word of a person like him had to be carefully thought out. Now that his statement could be conveyed to Wang Xingxiao's ears, it showed that the situation had spread widely enough, and he was not afraid that someone would misunderstand anything. When a person was not afraid of being misunderstood, there were often only two possibilities. One was that he had a clear conscience and was magnanimous, and the other was that it didn't matter if you misunderstood him because it was the truth. The former could not exist in the treacherous and deceitful politics, and the latter, Wang Jingxin's body shook and his face grew paler. The weather at the end of this summer was really cold, and the cold almost penetrated into the bone marrow. Xingxiao, what are you going to do? Wang Jingxin asked in a hoarse voice. Wang Xingxiao stood in front of the window, smoking silently and did not look back. Let's take one step at a time. Even if there is any action, we will talk about it after tonight's matter is over. His voice was still unhurried and he looked calm and composed, but there was a very obvious daze in his eyes. The eternal sword over Mormons was like an oppressive and suffocating shadow, which filled the glory of the Wang family of Beihai in the past hundreds of years and made all the light completely dim. There was no dream in the world and there was no light in the world. Sword Emperor was silent and the Wang family of Beihai was in turmoil. Wang Xiaoyao, Wang Qinglei and the Wang family of Beihai, which had always seemed to be very united, were torn into an ugly crack at a speed visible to the naked eye. Everything had been showing signs for a long time, but if there was no accident, all the focus would be on Dijiang. Dijiang broke through directly in the battle with Li Tianlan and entered the invincible realm. But Li Tianlan's ambiguous attitude at that time gave Wang Qinglei a good excuse. Dijiang, who temporarily exercised the power of the patriarch, was now notorious within Beihai province. Almost everyone thought that it was because of his mistakes in decision-making that the Wang family of Beihai suffered great humiliation. And after losing the battle with Li Tianlan, everyone wanted to know what Li Tianlan said to Dijiang at that time. Dijiang said Li Tianlan said nothing. But everyone saw that scene. That was why no one believed Dijiang at all. Whether this was the truth or not was no longer important. What was important was whether Wang Qinglei was willing to believe it. Obviously Wang Qinglei was not willing to believe it. Even if Dijiang's words could be recognized, he would find other crimes to oust Dijiang. A new expert of the invincible realm would enhance the strength of the Wang family of Beihai, but it was not a good thing for Wang Qinglei. He had already cooperated with Wang Xiaoyao. If the Wang family of Beihai only had Wang Xiaoyao as an expert of the invincible realm, then he could have the greatest advantage. Dijiang had been temporarily imprisoned. The internal differences in the Wang family of Beihai had been growing as to how to deal with him. Wang Qinglei insisted that Dijiang was no longer loyal to the Wang family of Beihai, and even reached some kind of deal with Li Tianlan, demanding that Dijiang be executed. Summer Solstice said that she believed in Dijiang's position and did not deal with Dijiang. The two sides argued endlessly and the rift was getting deeper and deeper. After Wang Xingxiao came back, Dijiang didn't even have the identity of acting patriarch anymore. Therefore Wang Xingxiao naturally took over the nominal supreme power of the Wang family of Beihai. Compared with Dijiang, who brought great humiliation to the Wang family of Beihai and even Beihai province, many people were full of hope for Wang Xingxiao, the young master. How to deal with Dijiang was mostly up to him. And such a decision, no matter what it was, once it was made, it was equivalent to the complete break between Wang Tianzong and Wang Qinglei. Wang Xingxiao knew what it meant. The Wang family of Beihai. The greatest Wang family of Beihai, which had been standing at the peak for hundreds of years, had developed to the present. It had been out of control. This rift was the biggest internal trouble inside Beihai. An Li Huaqing's words, today's Zhongzhou state was a foreign invasion. There were countless thoughts in Wang Xingxiao's mind. But in the face of such a situation, he really didn't know what to do. That kind of confusion and pressure were all on him now, and he couldn't breathe at all. The only thing he remembered was what his father said to him when he had just become an adult. That day Wang Tianzong called him to his study. The existing strength of the Wang family of Beihai, all the institutions, all the industries, and the future plans meant that everything of the Wang family of Beihai was in front of him. That day Wang Tianzong calmly told him that these belonged to him now, and the future belonged to Wang Xingxiao. He would become the future leader of the Wang family of Beihai. On that day Wang Xingxiao was not excited, fearful, excited or doubtful. He had been prepared for it, but in the face of the Wang family of Beihai, he was still a little numb. This was the only feeling he had at that time. That was the Wang family of Beihai in his father's hands, and in the face of all that he didn't know what to do. Wang Tianzong told him that the only thing he needed to do was to become a qualified leader. How can I become a qualified leader? That year on that day the blood-like setting sun of Mount Dibing shone through the window into Wang Tianzong's study. Outside the window the tide of Beihai rose and fell and people came and went on Mount Dibing. In the early autumn sunshine, the Wang family of Beihai still had its own prosperity, which was extremely gorgeous. Wang Xingxiao, who was only 18 years old, had entered the fire-flaming realm. He stood in the study, looked at Wang Tianzong and asked very seriously. Wang Tianzong looked out of the window for a long time. He turned around and his eyes became extremely deep. Wang Xingxiao still clearly remembered his father's answer. It was his own answer. As a leader you can do anything, you can make any decision and you can say anything. But the most important thing is, no matter what situation you face, no matter what situation you are in, never, ever say that you don't know to the people you lead. Why? Because you are a leader. Don't say that you don't know. That's not the power of a leader. No matter what situation you are in, those who follow you will wait for your decision. Even if your decision is wrong. Don't say that you don't know. Wang Xingxiao silently smoked a cigarette and let out a long breath. He didn't know if the decision he made tonight was right. No matter whether it was right or wrong, it was his decision. He didn't say that he didn't know. But at this moment he suddenly wanted to know what others thought of his decision. He turned around and looked at Wang Jingxin. Do you think the two counselors should be here tonight? Wang Jingxin was stunned. Wang Xingxiao's eyes were not very sharp, but Wang Jingxin knew very well that he couldn't be vague about such a question. From our standpoint we should. He hesitated and continued, but from the standpoint of Speaker Lin and we shouldn't. Yes. Wang Xingxiao sighed softly. But most of the time we don't have so many choices. Li Tianlon is too dangerous, Wang Jingxin said slowly. Even when he mentioned this name now he would feel a burst of fear in his heart. I don't think he dared to do this on impulse, but he knew what choice we should make. I have never underestimated Li Tianlon. Wang Xingxiao calmly said, the future heavenly son can be arrogant and supercilious, but he will never be stupid, let alone a fool. But just help him get through it? Wang Jingxin was a little unwilling. If it weren't for us, the giant group couldn't handle this incident. This time, if the Southeast group didn't take action, the giant group couldn't protect Li Tianlon at all, and it was even possible that it would lose itself. This time the Southeast group came forward to support Li Tianlon. In Wang Jingxin's view, there was no doubt that it released a considerable degree of goodwill to the giant group, but it might not be able to get any return in the next game. Could even be said that it was doomed to get no return. This kind of loss-making business was the most unpleasant. Helping him is also helping ourselves. Wang Xingxiao shook his head. In many cases we can't care about the enemy or ourselves. If we act rashly, it is likely to make things more troublesome and even a disaster. At least for now, we and Li Tianlan have our own bottom lines and rules that we must protect. Some rules can't be trampled. His eyes were a little serious. From the perspective of the Dark World, there is no doubt that Tiannan is Li Tianlan's territory. Just like Beihai is the territory of the Wang family of Beihai, Li Tianlan doesn't like the mayor of Xianyuan City. He can kill Qi Mulin and his family. This is Li Tianlan's attitude. We support Li Tianlan, and this is also our way of expressing our attitude. Tonight, if we don't take action, Li Tianlan may be miserable, but he may not die. If Li Tianlan is punished for this matter, then next time, Zhongzhou State will naturally interfere with the candidate of Speaker of Beihai Province. If Li Tianlan's bottom line can be trampled, then what about the bottom line of Beihai Province that Li Tianlan has just swept? The bigger this matter is, the better. In any case, the Southeast Group must support Li Tianlan and express its attitude to Zhongzhou State. Li Tianlan can kill Qi Mulin and his family because of the position of mayor of Xianyuan City. If Zhongzhou State wants to touch Beihai in the future, what Li Tianlan can do, the Wang family of Beihai can also do even more crazily. Wang Xingxiao's voice was cold and his eyes were full of determination. Any rich and powerful family would have its own concept of territory. And such a concept was undoubtedly the most important in the Wang family of Beihai. The 160,000 square kilometers of Beihai province, from any point of view, was the territory of the Wang family of Beihai and the most important foundation of the Southeast Group. For hundreds of years, the Speaker of Beihai Province and the commander of the Beihai Corps were appointed by the Wang family of Beihai. Zhongzhou State had never intervened. But it didn't mean that they didn't want to intervene. They just didn't have the right opportunity. And now the opportunity came. The incident between Li Tianlan and mayor of Xianyuan City was the best opportunity to test Wang Tianzong's whereabouts could make Zhongzhou State put down its scruples. Tiannan could be said to be Li Tianlan's territory. Li Tianlan's application for the establishment of Xianyuan City was just an application. From beginning to end, he didn't ask for any assistance from Zhongzhou State, so Xianyuan City was naturally his own city. Li Tianlan, as the founder of the city, didn't have the final say in such a mayor. Zhongzhou State didn't even ask Li Tianlan, and directly decided to push Wang Jingxin and Qi Mulin out. This was completely equivalent to slapping Li Tianlan in the face, and such a decision was passed. Li Tianlan naturally had to react. He had to react, and the tougher the better. So after being slapped in the face at the meeting, Li Tianlan directly slapped back without any hesitation. He did violate the most basic rule of Zhongzhou State, but in Wang Xingxiao's view, it was the Zhongzhou State Parliament that broke the rule first. The parliament destroyed the territorial consciousness of the rich and powerful. As the Wang family of Beihai with the most territorial concept, it couldn't be silent at this time. Li Tianlan built Xianyuan City by himself, but the candidate for the mayor didn't agree with him. From another point of view, would Zhongzhou State replace Beihai Province, which had been guarded by the Wang family of Beihai for hundreds of years, once conditions allowed? The most important thing was that Zhongzhou State didn't have this power. Beihai Province, Beihai itself. At the time of return, this was clearly written in the treaty. If the Southeast Group didn't support Li Tianlan at this time and let Xianyuan City elect a mayor with the will of Zhongzhou State, once such a dangerous precedent was set, they would naturally have more reasons to elect a speaker for Beihai who was also with the will of Zhongzhou State. This was the bottom line and principle of the Wang family of Beihai, and it couldn't be trampled. What the Wang family of Beihai had brought to Beihai Province for hundreds of years was their own will and freedom. That glorious and prosperous era was built on this bottom line and principle. The Wang family of Beihai had to protect all this at all costs. With this determination, what was the point of supporting Li Tianlan at this time at the meeting? This was a warning from Li Tianlan to Zhongzhou State. Don't have any ideas about Tiannan. It was also a warning from the Wang family of Beihai to Zhongzhou State. Don't have any ideas about Beihai. And Li Huaqing and the Zhongzhou State Parliament could react in such a short time. Naturally, they couldn't break the rules just for Li Tianlan. This might make them angry, or they might also attack Li Tianlan. But if it was just for this, they wouldn't react so fiercely, let alone so quickly. Most importantly, it was because of the Wang family of Beihai. The arrest of Li Tianlan could almost be said to be a warning to the Wang family of Beihai to see the consequences of Li Tianlan's violation of the will of Zhongzhou State. That was why the parliament acted so decisively, like a thunderbolt. The highest agency jointly issued an order in the fastest time and in the toughest terms to arrest Li Tianlan. It was so tough that there was no room for negotiation. This was also a warning from the parliament to the Wang family of Beihai, with Li Tianlan as the center. The game between the Wang family of Beihai and Zhou state had begun silently. And now it was the first round. The more it was like this, the more the Southeast group had to resist the pressure from the parliament and help Li Tianlan get through the current difficulties. In other words, even if Wang Jingxin was elected today and it was Wang Jingxin who was killed, and no matter how the Wang family of Beihai would retaliate in private in the future, at least in this meeting, they would still stand on Li Tianlan's side to maintain the overall stability, power and interests of the Wang family of Beihai. As long as they helped Li Tianlan get through it, if the parliament wanted to do something to Beihai in the future, Li Tianlan would definitely support the Wang family of Beihai. As for the reason, it was exactly the same as their support for Li Tianlan at this time. This was the most basic principle and bottom line of Beihai and Tianan which could not be broken. Even if the two sides were hostile, they could not allow the other side to break it. So in other words, as long as the Wang family of Beihai and Li Tianlan could withstand the pressure from Zhou state in this first round, then in the future, no matter how fierce the game between the Wang family of Beihai and Zhou state was, at least the highest power of the Wang family of Beihai in Beihai would not be shaken, and the internal personnel issues of Beihai would not be interfered with, unless Zhou state could settle Beihai province and Tianan province once and for all. Such a result could not put the Wang family of Beihai in an invincible position, but at least it would not be at the mercy of others when it was extremely weak. This was Li Tianlan's reward. At the critical moment, in order to maintain his interests in Tianan, Li Tianlan would naturally voice his support for the Wang family of Beihai, but that was all. As for the other content of the game between Beihai and Zhou state, he would definitely stay out of it. Unless Li Tianlan's Xinyuan city could also develop to a scale similar to Beihai province. But even such a return was rich enough for the current Wang family of Beihai. This was definitely not the situation that Zhou state wanted to see. So everything that happened tonight was just a beginning. And just a beginning. No matter what the result of the meeting was. Wang Xingxiao lit the second cigarette again. He inhaled half of it. In the lingering smoke, his voice was extremely heavy and slow. This matter will not be so easy to solve. Wang Jingxin took a deep breath and said dryly, "Can you stand it?" Maybe not. It depends on this meeting. Wang Xingxiao said slowly, "Since this kind of thing has been moved to the table, we can't take the vote. If we really vote, no matter what the result is, the mess will only be bigger. This is trouble for us, and it is not easy for the parliament either. The result of the meeting is just a beginning. In the next few months or even a year, I am afraid that Zhou state will be very lively. The specific result may not come out until then." Wang Jingxin narrowed his eyes and gradually calmed down. "What do you need me to do?" Looking at Wang Xingxiao, he slowly opened his mouth and said in a very sincere tone. As a member of the Wang family of Beihai and one of the core figures, it could be foreseen that once the Wang family of Beihai failed in this game, he would not end well. Even if it was just for himself, he wanted to do something. It has not come to that for the time being. Wang Xingxiao shook his head. "After you go back, you have to maintain the stability of Xianxia. That is the most important thing. The stability of Xianxia. As long as he and Su Xinghe no longer fought with Zhou Yuanshan, Xianxia would be very stable. They were really going to join hands. At least during the first game, the two sides would really join hands." Wang Jingxin understood what Wang Xingxiao meant and nodded. "I'll leave now." He stood up. Wang Xingxiao reached out and shook hands with him. Wang Jingxin took a deep look at him. "It's okay." Wang Xingxiao laughed. His smile was extremely deep and his eyes were extremely firm. "It will all pass." Chapter 723. The sky gradually brightened. When Horsewoman opened her eyes with some tiredness, it was already morning in Prince Yang's mansion. The hazy morning light was reflected in the flowers and plants of the mansion. Horsewoman stood at the door, quietly feeling the tranquility and beauty, and did not move for a long time. The servants in the mansion had begun to get up and busy. Some began to prepare breakfast, some began to trim flowers and plants, and some were cleaning the lawn. Horsewoman stood for a long time, subconsciously looking next door. The room next door was quiet. The antique door was closed and there was light inside. If you listened carefully, Horsewoman could feel the soft, soothing and almost elegant quiet breathing inside. That was Qin Weibai's room. When Qin Weibai did not get up, Horsewoman suddenly did not know what to do. As the supermaster of Samsara Palace, after the end of the chaos in Eastern Europe, Flaming Fire, the strongest of the 12 supermasters, formally drew a clear line with Qin Weibai and transferred Horsewoman here to take over Flaming Fire's position. However, until now Horsewoman was not very used to this identity. She was often at a loss and did not know what to do. When she did not know what to do, she would think about what Flaming Fire should do in her position. This was Horsewoman's own secret. Flaming Fire in Zhongzhou State, she was usually sleeping at this time. In foreign countries such as Eastern Europe or other countries, if the air quality was good, Flaming Fire would get up in the middle of the night to collect some fresh morning dew for Qin Weibai, filter it into the most natural pure water and make tea, soup and coffee. Qin Weibai always had high requirements for the quality of water. When she finished making breakfast, it was almost the time when Qin Weibai got up. Yozhou's industrial pollution was very serious, so morning dew could not be collected. In fact, Qin Weibai's daily water in Zhongzhou State was airlifted from other countries. As for breakfast, someone was busy now. Horsewoman sat down at the door and stared at the garden in front of her. Suddenly, she did not want to do anything and just stared blankly. The proceedings, contents, and results of yesterday's parliamentary meeting were immediately transmitted through a special channel to the military counselor, and then to the Prince of Yang's residence. Even the matter of the Qi family being exterminated by Li Tianlan was transmitted to the Prince of Yang's residence. After receiving the news, Qin Weibai reacted strangely. Because she did not respond at all. Such a big thing did not affect her mood at all. Now, listening to the quiet and elegant breathing next door, Horsewoman suddenly understood that Qin Weibai really did not take this matter to heart. The knight sighed softly. He suddenly missed the blissful days when he was carrying out missions all over the world. Without missions he could wander aimlessly. The sound of hurried footsteps could be heard. A butler in his 50s jogged to Horsewoman's side and handed her a medal. He said softly, "Sir, there's someone waiting outside. He wants to visit Chairman Qin." The exquisite medal was silvery white and sparkled in the rising sun. The knight's eyes suddenly narrowed. He took a deep look at the medal in his hand and asked, "Is she still waiting?" It was her. The knight was certain of the young man's identity just by looking at him. "Yes." The butler's voice became more respectful. "She's been here for about 2 hours. She's been standing outside the door the whole time. She only asked to bring this medal in and said that she wanted to visit you." 2 hours. Horsewoman muttered to herself. She calculated the time since the destruction of the Qi family and raised her eyebrows slightly. She touched the medal in her hand and stood up. She came to the door of Qin Weibai's room and knocked on the door. With a strong penetrating voice, she deliberately slowed down and sounded very soft. "Boss." The soft breathing inside the door paused for a moment, and then there was a sound. She was extremely lazy and delicate. "What's the matter?" Horsewoman hesitated. Qin Weibai's voice continued, "Come in and talk." The butler lowered her head and did not dare to look into the room. Horsewoman pushed the door open and walked in. Qin Weibai, wearing a moon-white silk nightgown, sat on the bed and was lazily tidying her hair. Horsewoman handed over the medal in her hand and whispered, "She's outside the door. He wants to see you." Qin Weibai looked at the medal and was silent for a moment. Then she whispered, "She's slow. It said that she has been standing outside the door for 2 hours." Horsewoman whispered, 2 hours. For the person outside the door, this was undoubtedly a great sincerity. Qin Weibai shook her head. "That's too slow." Horsewoman said no more, quietly waiting for Qin Weibai's decision. Qin Weibai touched the medal in her hand and handed it to Horsewoman. She whispered, "Invite her in. I'll wait for her here." Horsewoman nodded and turned to go out with the medal. She walked to the door with the butler. The defense of Prince Yang's mansion had been strengthened after the raid on the hospital. Many elites in plain clothes had moved from the dark to the light. The 2 motionless guards at the door were retired veterans of Zhongzhou's Eastern Deity Swords Brigade. They were in the ice-condensing realm. Under the guard of these elites, the entire Prince Yang's mansion appeared more and more awe-inspiring. A figure almost shrouded in clouds and mist, stood quietly in front of the Prince Yong's mansion. Her attire seemed very ordinary, but it was also extremely gorgeous. The rising sun shone on her body. She stood there quietly, motionless, but no one could see her appearance clearly. Calm, dignified, generous and patient. Like a shadow, she quietly stood there, restraining all of her elegance and beauty. However, she still possessed a charm that could not be ignored. Horsewoman hurriedly walked out of the door. Seeing the figure standing outside, she quickly walked a few steps forward and returned the medal in her hand. Bowing slightly, she softly said, "Madam, please follow me." The figure in the clouds and mist smiled lightly. She did not accept the medal, only saying softly, "Consider it a small gift for Chief Qin. In the future, if Chief Qin has any needs, you can bring this medal to me at any time. If I can help you, I won't refuse." Horsewoman's expression suddenly froze. For a moment she was somewhat hesitant. Disregarding the value of this medal, just the material it was made of platinum. It was indeed a small gift to give away. However, the contents of the woman's words carried great weight. It was so heavy that even a horsewoman would not dare to rashly accept it. She lowered her head, glancing at the medal in her hand. Under the sunlight, the brilliance of the medal made of platinum burned brightly. Extremely exquisite and aesthetically pleasing patterns were engraved on the medal. They were clearly layered, ancient, exquisite, vast and clear. The countless patterns on the medal outlined the sea and the vault of heaven. The vault of heaven and the sea. This was the badge of the Wang family of Beihai. Within the Wang family of Beihai, those who could carry the medal of the vault of heaven and the sea with them were all core figures of the Wang family of Beihai. Every medal was recorded in detail within Beihai and could not be counterfeited. Different people had the same medal, but at the bottom of the medal, there was a small character engraved to distinguish the identity of the medal holder. At the bottom of this medal, there was only a simple small character engraved. Solstice. The hostess of the Wang family of Beihai, summer solstice. No one expected that when the internal situation of Zhengzhou state became more and more delicate, summer solstice, who was supposed to preside over the overall situation in Mount Dibing, would enter Yuzhou in an extremely low-key manner and visit Qin Weibai. Moreover, she waited for 2 hours. The most important thing was that summer solstice gave this medal to Qin Weibai. It was such an obvious kindness. But as soon as they met, she gave such a meaningful small gift. What did she want from Qin Weibai? Horsewoman's thoughts kept flashing in her mind. She did not accept the medal, nor did she refuse. She just said calmly, "Madam, please." Summer solstice, who seemed to be shrouded in clouds and mist, smiled softly and walked into the mansion. Qin Weibai had changed into a loose set of home clothes. She had washed up simply and her hair was tied up casually. After a night's rest, the bedroom was filled with a natural and rich fragrance that could hardly be dispersed. She opened the window and let the outside air flow in. She sat on the sofa and made a pot of tea with a serious look on her face. When summer solstice walked in, the fragrance in the room was mixed with the fragrance of tea. It was faint and dispersed by the morning air, making people's sense of smell extremely soft. Summer solstice looked at Qin Weibai's expression and sighed softly. She was indeed an extremely perfect woman. Her beauty could cause the downfall of empires and cities. It would not be an exaggeration to use all the adjectives to describe her. Any man, even if it was a future heaven's chosen one, would be extremely lucky to have her. Or even luck. A complicated look flashed in summer solstice's eyes, but her voice was still steady and soft. "Hello, Boss Qin." She was very humble and even used honorifics. "Hello, Mrs. Wang." Qin Weibai stood up and took the initiative to reach out her hand. Summer solstice didn't feel anything, but Qin Weibai's arms stiffened. Summer solstice shook hands with her and the two sat face to face on the sofa. The knight retreated without batting an eyelid. "I haven't seen you for a while, Boss Qin. You are still elegant." Summer solstice chuckled softly. The first time they met was when the maneuver of the two academies had just begun. At that time, Qin Weibai directly went to Mount Dibing with an extremely tough attitude. Naturally, the conversation was not friendly. "Madam, you look a little haggard." Qin Weibai said softly and poured a cup of tea for summer solstice. Summer solstice took it and said thank you. "When did you come?" Qin Weibai asked. "I came here as soon as I heard that the Qi family was destroyed." Summer Solstice held the teacup and looked at Qin Weibai. Her tone was very calm. I should have come earlier, but I couldn't find a chance. This time it's an opportunity. Tianlan destroyed the Qi family and committed a big taboo. But the action of Zhongzhou state is also challenging the bottom line of Tianlan and Beihai. In this matter, our position should be the same. With the basis of cooperation, our meeting will not seem abrupt, right? Cooperation? Qin Weibai raised her eyebrows slightly. Cooperation. Summer Solstice's voice was calm. Qin Weibai was silent for a while and then said lightly, "First, I don't think it's cooperation this time. Tianan and Beihai have the same position. It's just that each has a bottom line that needs to be guarded. This is at best a tacit understanding. I don't see any possibility of cooperation except for this matter. Second, even if you want to cooperate, you should go to Tianlan, not me. But I don't think he will agree to this kind of cooperation. You help him this time and he will also help you guard something. But this is just a tacit understanding. We help each other only to help ourselves. The conditions for cooperation are not established." She looked at Summer Solstice with soft eyes. After the chaos in Eastern Europe, the perfect woman who was more and more restrained and willing to stand behind the scenes, said softly, "Madam, you've found the wrong person." Oh. Summer Solstice shook her head with a smile. "It's the right and best candidate to find you. As you said, in this matter, there is only a tacit understanding between Beihai and Li Tianlan, not the basis of cooperation. We don't expect Li Tianlan to help us with anything. In fact, he will develop Beihai next and won't have the spare power to participate in the game of Zhongzhou state. This time, I'm not here to cooperate with Li Tianlan, but you, Boss Qin. Or this can be regarded as a deal. You want me to betray Tianlan?" Qin Weibai's voice was a little cold. "It's not so serious. We each take what we need. What Boss Qin has been doing is helping Li Tianlan, hasn't it?" Summer Solstice said calmly, "Beihai is so big. There must be something you need. I'm here this time to get an answer from you. Boss Qin, you can also put forward your own conditions. As long as both of us think it's appropriate, the deal is made." She looked at Qin Weibai and smiled. "Li Tianlan and Beihai have reached an agreement. Next we will give Li Tianlan a lot of things. But there are always some things that are of great help to Li Tianlan, but he doesn't know them. Similarly, you can't tell him for the time being. I can give them to you. How would I know what Tianlan doesn't know?" Qin Weibai said calmly. "The night Li Tianlan stepped on Mount Dibing, I saw the real 13-story building. No, in other words, I saw the real Xianyuan sword." Summer Solstice looked into Qin Weibai's eyes. "With the intelligence system of the Samsara Palace, is there anything you don't know now?" Qin Weibai was silent and did not speak for a long time. Summer Solstice was very patient and waited quietly, waiting for Qin Weibai to make a price. With the current situation of the Wang family of Beihai, she came here today. Qin Weibai must know what the answer she wanted was. Now it depended on whether Qin Weibai's price was acceptable to her. Qin Weibai lowered her head. At this moment, no one could see the fear and hesitation in her eyes. "I do have what I want." She took a sip of tea and said softly, "But the answer I give you may not be what you want. Are you sure you want to make a deal with me?" "What do you mean?" Summer Solstice frowned slightly. "Since you've seen the Xianyuan sword, you should know that Mormon's sword shouldn't have existed for me. Don't you understand?" Qin Weibai glanced at Summer Solstice. Summer Solstice's face changed slightly. Qin Weibai said no more and quietly enjoyed the tea. "In this case, Boss Qin, do you have nothing to teach me?" After a long time, Summer Solstice asked with a dignified face. "Yes." Qin Weibai's voice was concise and powerful. Summer Solstice took a deep breath and asked faintly, "What do you want?" "The body of the god of war." The hesitation in Qin Weibai's eyes disappeared completely, and she gave her answer in an unquestionable tone. The body of the god of war. Even in the Wang family of Beihai, this was the core secret. Summer Solstice was not surprised. She just looked at Qin Weibai and whispered, "You really know?" Qin Weibai put down the teacup. "Will you give it to me or not?" Summer Solstice hesitated, which was rare. Qin Weibai did not urge her. She just reminded her, the Wang family of Beihai is in danger now. It's time to put down some ambitions and make some concessions after standing at the peak for hundreds of years. In fact, if the Li family had not appeared in Zhongzhou state, the Wang family of Beihai would not have been so glorious. You need to pay back what you owe the Li family. It's not good for you to be too stubborn. What if I don't give it to you? What's the worst result? Summer Solstice suddenly asked. She shook her head and looked straight at Qin Weibai. I don't want to listen to the analysis. I want to hear the result. I don't know the result. But at present, even if I know part of the result, it's definitely not what you want to hear. Qin Weibai said. Summer Solstice's face turned pale for a moment. She could see that Qin Weibai was telling the truth. The so-called result was not what Summer Solstice wanted to hear, nor was it what Qin Weibai wanted to see. How could this be? Summer Solstice muttered to herself. This is your own choice. Qin Weibai said faintly, will you give me the body of the god of war? Obviously, if she couldn't get what she wanted, this conversation would end here. I can give you half at most. Summer Solstice gritted her teeth and said. But Qin Weibai's tone was unquestionable. Half of the body of the god of war is enough. Since you know about the body of the god of war, you should know that the Wang family of Beihai currently only has one. And it's not a complete product. The Wang family of Beihai is doing the final research on it. Once it succeeds, even if Li Tianlan breaks through and becomes a heavenly son in the future with this thing in hand, he can survive in most cases. What else do you want? Summer Solstice's voice was a little weak. I really need one. Qin Weibai said seriously. Half at most. More than this share is also unbearable for me. I'd rather terminate this transaction. Summer Solstice said with some tiredness and determination. Are you going to give your half to Wang Tianzong? Qin Weibai suddenly said. Summer Solstice's face changed and she did not speak. The thing that could save Li Tianlan's life after he became a heavenly son could naturally save the life of the current heavenly son. The only body of the god of war in the Wang family of Beihai was equivalent to 2 extra lives for the heavenly son. Wang Tianzong could use half of it this time. Once he recovered, even if Li Tianlan was at the same level as him in the future, with the other half of the body of the god of war, the Wang family of Beihai had enough confidence to suppress Li Tianlan. But now Wang Tianzong used half of it and had to give the other half to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan was not injured. Once he broke through and became a heavenly son in the future, with half of the body of the god of war in hand, Emperor Dong's palace would have the confidence to face the Wang family of Beihai. Summer Solstice's agreeing to this transaction meant that she had made a major concession on the future of Emperor Dong's palace, which was not what she wanted to see. But she had no choice. Zhongzhou State's intention to target the Wang family of Beihai had become more and more obvious. Li Tianlan had destroyed the Qi family for the first time. Summer Solstice was not optimistic about what would happen next. Asking Qin Weibai was the most helpless way. Qin Weibai might not be able to help them win the game, but at least she knew what they should not do. This was undoubtedly the most important thing. Okay. Qin Weibai thought for a long time and nodded slowly. When can it be sent here? This afternoon at the latest. Summer Solstice said slowly. Then stay here for lunch, madam. Have a taste of my cooking. Qin Weibai said with a smile. Summer Solstice narrowed her eyes and said nothing. I can't tell you too much before I get the body of the god of war. Qin Weibai said blandly, but at least I can tell you one thing. Compared to the worst result, everything is just the beginning. You should pay more attention to Zhongzhou State. Zhongzhou State. Summer Solstice smiled bitterly. She wanted to pay attention to Zhongzhou State, but the Wang family of Beihai was also in turmoil. Don't underestimate Wang Tianzong. Qin Weibai said softly. He is your man. Even if there are 1 or 2 clowns in the Wang family of Beihai, even if he is seriously injured now, the situation is still under his control as long as he is not dead. Summer Solstice's spirit suddenly shook. She looked up at Qin Weibai and said, What do you mean? Qin Weibai smiled and did not answer the question. She just said softly, What do you want to eat at noon, madam? Chapter 724. The sun was rising and the sun was shining brightly. At the end of summer and the beginning of autumn, Yuzhou ushered in a rare good weather. Bathed in the golden sun, when Hua Qingfeng knocked on the door of the Bai family's villa with a cautious face, what he felt was not the surging killing intent and oppressive atmosphere in the villa, but calmness. Everyone in the Bai family was calm. Dongqing Wudi was also calm. As for Li Tianlan, who had caused an uproar, he was even calmer. The family was having breakfast in the dining room. Seeing the servant coming over with Hua Qingfeng, Li Tianlong casually waved to him and said in a calm voice, "Have you eaten? Let's have some together." "Minister." "Your Highness, Speaker by Secretary General." Hua Qingfeng was stunned for a moment and greeted him unnaturally. He looked very awkward. "Even if you want to catch him, you don't have to be in such a hurry, do you?" In the faint voice, Bai Qingqian came out of the kitchen with a plate of fried eggs. She glanced at Hua Qingfeng and said in a lukewarm tone. At this moment, even the Shadow Sect master who had been with Li Huaqing all year round, felt a little out of breath. From the moment he entered the door to the present, except for Li Tianlong, only Bai Qingqian said something to him, but the dissatisfaction in her tone was clearly expressed. Dongqing Wudi and Bai Zhanfeng were eating. They didn't seem to notice Hua Qingfeng's arrival at all. They didn't even lift their eyelids. This kind of quiet calmness seemed to clearly express the indifference and hostility of the Bai family and the Dongqing clan, and then it turned into a huge pressure, which almost made Hua Qingfeng breathless. Hua Qingfeng stood stiffly and looked at Li Tianlong, who was eating breakfast slowly. He didn't dare to urge him, nor did he know what to say. He could only be silent. In the silence he could clearly feel that the giant group and the academics, who had decided to cooperate because of Li Tianlong and had been cooperating happily for more than 3 years, seemed to be drifting apart because of Li Tianlong. The rift between the two groups was getting bigger and bigger, to the extent that it could almost tear apart the honeymoon period of cooperation between the two sides. The Qi family was destroyed. Li Tianlong had touched the bottom line of Zhou state. As the president, Li Huaqing was bound to punish Li Tianlong severely. But as the leader of the academics, it was not appropriate to do so. The general direction and personal position were always in conflict. Hua Qingfeng could not deny the correctness of Li Huaqing's action, but he did not dare to agree with his resolute approach. So the contradiction turned into silence. He stood there looking at Li Tianlong with great patience. "How are sect master's injuries?" Li Tianlong asked casually. "It's all right." The corners of Hua Qingfeng's mouth moved and he squeezed out a smile. He had not recovered from the serious injuries he had suffered in Eastern Europe. In fact, he had been staying in the hospital of the giant group to recuperate recently. When the Burning Legion raided the hospital, he barely fought with the experts of the Burning Legion for a few moves, which affected his injuries and made his internal injuries more serious. In fact, Hua Qingfeng was not in the lineup to capture Li Tianlong. But for some reason he came here with his injuries. "Who are these people?" Li Tianlong's tone did not fluctuate at all, and he concentrated on the breakfast in front of him. They were all very homely breakfasts. Bai Qingqian, who was in a high position, cooked them in person. Naturally, they could not be as delicious as those made by professional chefs. Millet porridge, fried dumplings, fried eggs, and a few light side dishes were common, but Li Tianlong enjoyed them very much. The Ministry of Security, the General Staff Department, the Special Operations Bureau, the Shadow Sting Army. Hua Qingfeng quickly said the names of more than a dozen agencies, all of which were well-known elite forces in Yuzhou. These agencies were dispatched at the same time, which represented the attitude of Zhou state. It was roughly estimated that in order to capture Li Tianlong, Zhou state had dispatched at least 5,000 people this time, and he was afraid that more people were preparing at this time. This could definitely be said to be a real big move. "So, the manor of the Bai family has been surrounded now, right?" Bai Zhanfeng suddenly spoke slowly, and there was no joy or anger in his voice. Hua Qingfeng's body suddenly straightened for a moment. He forced a smile and said, "Chairman Bai, we're not targeting the Bai family. As a matter of fact, the personnel of various departments are currently at the periphery of Qingshan. They're about 3 kilometers away from the manor. 2 hours ago they were already there. Under the order of the parliament, no one has approached the manor of the Bai family. You know what this means?" Bai Zhanfeng twitched the corner of his mouth, but he did not speak. Hua Qingfeng's forehead was already oozing sweat. After the hospital of the giant group was raided, the giant group had made arrangements as soon as possible. All the wounded were arranged in another sanatorium, and it was still centralized treatment. But this time, in order to ensure that the sanatorium was safe, Wei Kunlun, the new invincible realm expert of Zhou state, personally stayed in the hospital. And Hua Qingfeng was also treated in that sanatorium, but more than an hour ago he was jointly invited by the Ministry of Security and the General Staff Department to capture Li Tianlong. To capture Li Tianlan in the manner of the Bai family. These were completely different things. Only to capture Li Tianlan, not many people dared to do it or were willing to do it. At this time they also had to offend the Bai family, so no one was willing to do it. The extermination of the Qi family was indeed shocking, and it touched the bottom line of Zhou state. But after seeing the performance of Fan Tianyin, the minister of the Ministry of Security, the anger in the hearts of others dissipated unconsciously. Fan Tianyin was calm from beginning to end. He accepted the order of Zhou state and came to the Bai family's manor with the elites of the Ministry of Security. Then there was no then. Qi Mulin was the deputy minister of the Ministry of Security. He was killed, which was a slap in the face of the Ministry of Security. But Fan Tianyin was not angry at all, and it was clear that he was not willing to rush over to capture Qi Mulin. Since he was like this, the others were even more cautious. No one was willing to offend the Bai family. And no one dared to offend Li Tianlan. The miserable end of the Qi family was still vivid in their minds. Li Tianlan was completely a madman. He dared to kill Qi Mulin. If he was really annoyed, why didn't he dare to kill others? Qi Mulin had been killed. If he killed one or two more people with the same position as Qi Mulin, how serious could the crime be? Therefore, the elites of all agencies were gathered near Green Mountain, but they were unwilling to step into the Bai family's manor. The leaders gathered together to discuss and finally decided to invite Hua Qingfeng over. Hua Qingfeng was the chief of staff of the Snowdance Corps. He had fought side by side with Li Tianlan in Eastern Europe. With this friendship, there was at least a leeway to ease the situation. Hua Qingfeng was undoubtedly very annoyed, but he also knew that such a stalemate was not a solution. Moreover, the so-called capture at least left some leeway. After hesitating for a while, he finally walked into the Bai family's manor. What does the parliament mean? Li Tianlan stood up from the table, wiped the corners of his mouth with a napkin and said with a smile, "Where do they want to take me? Or do they want to kill me directly?" "No." Hua Qingfeng said with a wry smile. "The parliament means that if your highness doesn't resist, we should invite you to the conference room in the hidden Dragon Sea. If he resisted, of course there was nothing to say. They could just kill him directly." This kind of arrest with a lot of leeway also told all agencies involved in the arrest a message. Now, although this matter was very big and Zhou state's response seemed tough, in fact, Zhou state still hadn't made up its mind. If Li Tianlan didn't resist, they would directly invite him to the hidden Dragon Sea. This attitude was enough to explain the problem. At least, it proved that Li Tianlan had the possibility to get away from this matter. The major agencies that grasped this point were even more unwilling to offend Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes and nodded, saying, "In that case, let's go." He reached out his hands to Hua Qingfeng and said with a faint smile, "Do you want to cuff me?" Hua Qingfeng smiled bitterly and said awkwardly, "Your Highness, you must be joking." He turned slightly and said respectfully, "Your Highness, please." Li Tianlan turned around and his eyes fell on Bai Qingqian. Bai Qingqian was also looking at him. Her eyes were soft and full of complexity. Li Tianlan subconsciously avoided her eyes and said dryly, "Auntie, I'll go." Bai Qingqian was silent for a while and nodded. "Let's go too." Bai Zhanfeng put down the bowl and chopsticks and glanced at Dongqing Wudi. One of them was a director of Zhou state, and the other was a member of Zhou state. Naturally, they also had to attend. And the next meeting? Dongqing Wudi nodded and said calmly, "Okay." Li Tianlan said no more and went straight out with Hua Qingfeng. A black Audi was parked outside the villa. When Li Tianlan came out, the driver had trotted to open the door for Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan sat in the car, leaned against the back of the chair and closed his eyes to rest. The car slowly left the manor in Qingshan. Farther away, the elites of the major agencies began to retreat silently while breathing a sigh of relief. At 7:15 a.m., the black Audi slowly stopped in front of the conference room in the hidden Dragon Sea. Li Tianlan got out of the car and looked at the flag of Zhou state standing in front of the conference room. His expression became more and more indifferent. "Your Highness." Hua Qingfeng followed Li Tianlan, wanting to say something but stopping on second thought. "What's wrong?" Li Tianlan asked. "Nothing." Hua Qingfeng forced a smile and braced himself to say, "I'll go in with your Highness." Li Tianlan didn't aggressively ask Hua Qingfeng what he meant by accompanying him into the conference room. He just said, and strode into the conference room. The conference room, which had just ended, was full of people again. All the members of Zhou State. All the 9 directors were present. Only Gu Xingyun's seat was empty. Li Tianlan glanced at the high-level officials of Zhou State in the conference room and didn't speak. His eyes fell on Li Huaqing's face and he said calmly, "What's the matter? Comrade Li Tianlan." Li Huaqing's deep voice sounded and his address was very formal. "We asked you to come here to confirm where you were between 3:15 and 3:50 last night." Everyone's eyes were focused on Li Tianlan's excessively young face. Li Tianlan laughed, bland, casual and careless. "I was on Rosewood Street." He slowly walked forward and entered the conference room. The high-level officials in the conference room seemed to be shocked. No one expected Li Tianlan's answer to be so straightforward. "What were you doing on Rosewood Street?" Li Huaqing looked at him expressionless. "I wandered around and killed some people by the way." Li Tianlan approached the conference table. "Stop." A member of parliament stood up nervously, looked at Li Tianlan who was getting closer and closer and said in a deep voice. Li Tianlan glanced at him and his footsteps didn't stop at all. "I killed some people." Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes. "So you killed 19 members of Comrade Qi Mulin's family?" Li Tianlan walked into the conference table, pulled a chair and sat down. He looked at Li Huaqing and said blandly, "I killed them. What do you want?" No one spoke. The conference room suddenly quieted down. Qin Fangqing's face twitched and he didn't speak. But the eyes of the 2 directors and several members of the Southeast group suddenly became a little gloomy. Not because of Li Tianlan's answer, but because of his position at this time. When he admitted that he was the one who killed the Qi family, he was already sitting in front of Li Huaqing. This position could not be regarded as the end of the rectangular conference table. He and Li Huaqing were facing each other and it was hard to say which was the main seat. Everyone looked at Li Tianlan sitting there and their eyes were a little complicated. That was because this position was already taken. For many years, there were only 2 people sitting at both ends of this conference table. At one end was the president. At the other end was Sword Emperor. And now the president was still sitting at one end of the conference table. At the other end was Dong Huang, who was so young that people couldn't believe it. Li Tianlan sat there quietly, looking calm, watching the whole conference room. In the silence, his voice slowly sounded, extremely domineering and arrogant. "Tell me," he said blandly, "what do you want?" Chapter 725. Young and vigorous. At this moment, Li Tianlan, who was sitting in the conference room and watching the council members, interpreted the word to the extreme. The meeting of the Parliament of Zhou State had always been solemn, and even sacred. In the past many years, even Sword Emperor Wang Tianzong, who occasionally showed his brilliance, was reasonable and steady. Li Tianlan did not intend to be reasonable, nor did he intend to save anyone's face. The purpose of this meeting was very simple. It was to discuss the extermination of the Qi family. Li Tianlan directly admitted that he killed them, and then looked at the high-level officials of Zhou State openly, asking them what they wanted. At this moment almost everyone was angry. Li Tianlan's indifference and contempt were almost completely shown on his face. That kind of carelessness completely challenged the bottom line of the Parliament of Zhou State again. It seemed that no one had ever dared to be so presumptuous on such an occasion since the founding of Zhou State. Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes, and his deep eyes suddenly became extremely piercingly cold. "Why?" He looked at Li Tianlan and said in a low voice, one word at a time. The kind of long-term high position and the power of the whole Zhou State became an unimaginable momentum that shrouded Li Tianlan, with unimaginable heaviness. Everyone in the conference room could feel the anger behind Li Huaqing's calmness. His voice was very light, but it echoed in the conference room like rumbling thunder. Qi Mulin is the mayor of Xianyuan City appointed by the parliament. Before that, he was the deputy minister of the Ministry of Security. Li Tianlan, you are also a member of Zhou State. A few hours ago you were even the marshal of Zhou State. You personally slaughtered nearly 20 people of Qi Mulin's family. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Did you care about the decision of the parliament? Did you care about the laws of Zhou State? In your eyes, what are Zhou State and the parliament? Li Huaqing's voice was getting louder and louder and his tone was getting more and more agitated. Li Tianlan's domineering had completely angered the president, who had been very gentle since he took office. At this moment he even really wanted to kill Li Tianlan. The majestic anger was getting clearer and clearer in the conference room. At this moment, everyone was silent, and only Li Huaqing's voice kept ringing. Li Tianlan was silent for a long time and then said lightly, "Mr. President, you misunderstood me." "What do you mean?" Li Huaqing was aggressive. As the president of Xianxia State, in addition to paying attention to the development of Xianxia State, he also had to maintain the dignity and order of Xianxia State. Compared with the former, the latter could even be said to be his most important job. Li Tianlan killing Qi Mulan sounded one thing, but the former marshal of Xianxia State killing the new mayor of Xianyuan City was another. This was a challenge to the order of the entire Xianxia State, the most dangerous beginning. To exaggerate it, it was even the beginning of subverting the whole system. Li Huaqing could not tolerate such a thing even if he thought highly of Li Tianlan. Because he was the president of Xianxia State. If something bad happened to Xianxia State in the future because of what happened to Li Tianlan, then everything would be his responsibility. Therefore, even if it was his own son who had done such a thing, Li Huaqing must take him down today, not to mention a young man he thought highly of. "I'm a member of Xianxia State," Li Tianlan said calmly. "Even not long ago I could barely be regarded as a member of the core power of Xianxia State. This is my country. I have awe for Xianxia State and I also have respect for the parliament. I will abide by the order of Xianxia State, and I am willing to uphold the decision of the parliament. Killing Qi Mulan has nothing to do with the parliament or Xianxia State." "Tell me your reason." Li Huaqing clenched his fists, gritted his teeth and said, "I don't like him." Li Tianlan said softly without any anger in his voice, "So I killed him. In fact, I am willing to respect any decision of the parliament. Xianxia State is a vast land with abundant resources, and some talents can always be found. Xianyuan City has just started and the system in its jurisdiction is being rebuilt, so it is not difficult to manage. Xianxia State can appoint a new mayor for Xianyuan City, and I support the decision of Xianxia State 100%. Everyone was dumbfounded. Li Huaqing was stunned for a moment. Li Tianlan killed Qi Mulan not because of the decision of the parliament, but because he didn't like him? You fucking killed him because you didn't like him? You even killed his whole family. Are you kidding me? Li Huaqing's mouth twitched violently for a long time, and he couldn't even speak for a while. Li Tianlan had asked the parliament to reconsider the new mayor of Xianyuan City for the second time. His voice was very sincere. But this time no one spoke at all. Elect a new mayor? Are you kidding me? Even an idiot wouldn't believe that Li Tianlan didn't like Qi Mulan. And even if he believed it, there must be a reason to dislike a person. The reason why Li Tianlan disliked Qi Mulan was that he was the mayor of Xianyuan City. What kind of person was Qi Mulan? He was the most dazzling rookie in Xianxia State in recent years, the adopted son of the former director Qi Baitsong, and the future leader of the Special Warfare Group. If such a person could be killed because he didn't like him, would they send someone else to Xianyuan City to take up the post? Would they really take up the post? That was completely courting death. Maybe the next day, Li Tianlan would dislike the new mayor and kill him again. Li Tianlan could do this kind of thing. He could really do it. Qi Mulan's lesson was deep enough. Even if the directors and members of parliament were really stubborn and dared to send a mayor who didn't meet Li Tianlan's requirements to Tiannan, it was estimated that no one would dare to accept this post. Establishing power. That was establishing power. The bloody lesson of the Qi family was enough to make everyone flinch from this post. You don't like him. The corner of Li Huaqing's mouth trembled and his voice was a little twisted. You can kill him because you don't like him? Who gave you the right? I'm just protecting the interests of Xianxia State. Li Tianlan casually said, I received news that Qi Mulan is likely to have something to do with the Burning Legion's invasion of Tiannan, and even Qi Mulan may have committed treason. I took action at this time to prevent Xianxia State from suffering greater losses in the future. Nonsense. Li Huaqing slammed the table and flew into a rage. Sitting next to him, Qin Fengqing's arm trembled slightly. He looked at Li Tianlan with a somewhat complicated look in his eyes. I'm just telling the truth. Li Tianlan opened his eyes and didn't blink. Anyway, Qi Mulan was dead. Whatever he said was the truth. He had given him a way out. However, Li Huaqing obviously didn't intend to give in. He just said coldly, Qi Mulan committed treason? Where did you get the news? Have you investigated? Why did you investigate Qi Mulan? You didn't investigate? How can you speak without investigating? Even if it's true, why didn't you report the situation to the parliament in time? Time was too tight. I didn't have time. Li Tianlan still opened his eyes. It's ridiculous. With Qi Mulan's status in Zhongzhou state, what good can it do him to collude with the Burning Legion? Your Highness Li Tianlan, a murderer must pay with his life. It's meaningless to say some nonsense reasons. In the gentle voice, Hua Xingyang, the vice minister of the cabinet, slowly opened his mouth. His voice was extremely cold. But everyone at the meeting was shocked. Because of Hua Xingyang's words. A murderer must pay with his life. On such an occasion, every word of Hua Xingyang couldn't be said casually. As Li Huaqing's right-hand man, his words represented the attitude of the whole academics. This time it touched the bottom line of the academics. Did they directly want to kill Li Tianlan? Let's not talk about the benefits first. Since Your Highness Li Tianlan said that Qi Mulan committed treason, there must be some reason. I think we can check it first. Vice President Wan Qingyun said calmly. Even if Qi Mulan is guilty, Li Tianlan doesn't have the right to kill him directly. Qin Fangqing said lightly. But he doesn't deserve death. Qi Mulan committed treason. Li Tianlan killed him. In order to safeguard the interests of Zhongzhou state, it's understandable that young people are impulsive. Wan Qingyun said tit for tat. At this point, Xianyuan City could be put aside for the time being. The academics and the prince group wanted to punish Li Tianlan severely and maintain the authority of Zhongzhou state, especially the authority of private territories like Tianan. And the southeast group wanted to maintain its territorial consciousness and protect Li Tianlan. The focus was not on Xianyuan City at all, but on Li Tianlan. As long as Li Tianlan was protected, the southeast group would withstand the first wave of temptation of Zhongzhou state. So now no matter what Li Tianlan said, the southeast group was willing to believe it. Even if he didn't say anything, the southeast group would find a reason to protect him. Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes and looked at Qin Fangqing again. They had enough psychological preparation for the reaction of the southeast group. But the firm reaction of the southeast group still made them a little angry. Wan Qingyun's attitude had already explained the problem. It showed that in the next game the Wang family of Beihai had no intention of compromising. When they just took action, the Wang family of Beihai had already taken action. Comrade Yunhai, you are the Minister of Politics and Law of Zhongzhou State. What do you think of this matter? Li Huaqing was silent for a while, suddenly turned his head and called the name of the leader of the North Group. This was the only group that was outside of the big group. And he was in charge of the politics and law of Zhongzhou State. It was natural for him to show his attitude at this time. Li Huaqing's name call was not abrupt. Zhou Yunhai's attitude was crucial. Protecting Li Tianlan was the bottom line of the giant group and the southeast group. Punishing Li Tianlan severely was the goal of the academics and the giant group. This was almost a copy of the previous meeting. At least in terms of the contrast of power, there was no change. In the situation where the two sides were clearly separated, Wang Qinglei would not keep silent this time. After all, he was a member of the Wang family of Beihai. No matter how big the rift inside Beihai was, Wang Qinglei still had the territorial awareness that he should have. In this way, Zhou Yunhai's attitude became the key of the key. Li Huaqing and Qin Fangqing still did not understand the sudden defection of the North Group. At this time, Li Huaqing called the name, undoubtedly to really see Zhou Yunhai's attitude. Zhou Yunhai was stunned. He picked up the teacup and took a sip of tea, then said slowly, I think we can slow down. If Qi Mulan really committed treason, Li Tianlan's action this time is pardonable. We still have to investigate this matter. But the impact of this matter is very bad. Even if Qi Mulan really committed treason, Li Tianlan has no right to kill. I think it is not suitable for your highness to go to Tianan for the time being. How about taking a rest for a while? There was a moment of silence in the conference room, and countless eyes exchanged quickly for a moment. This time Zhou Yunhai did not change sides. But he did not take sides either. On such a sensitive issue, the North Group chose to be neutral without hesitation. By not supporting Li Tianlan, they did not offend the giant group and the southeast group. And letting Li Tianlan temporarily rest for a while was undoubtedly supporting the academics and the prince group, even though it was far from the support they needed. Li Tianlan sat there expressionlessly, waiting for the result of his trial by the parliament. As time went by, the meeting showed no sign of ending. Time went from morning to noon. It was close to evening again. The heated debate almost lasted for nearly 12 hours. When the night was about to fall, under the watch of countless people in Zhou state, the parliament finally made a response to this incident. Qi Mulan was suspected of treason. The parliament ordered the Ministry of Security, the General Staff, the Ministry of Politics and Law, and the Ministry of Supervision to set up a joint task force to carry out a detailed investigation. The Ministry of Personnel of Zhou State officially issued a document appointing Ning Qianxing as the mayor of Xianyuan City. The punishment of Li Tianlan was suspended. From now on, Li Tianlan, the palace lord of Eastern Palace, would be temporarily sent to the desert prison for an undetermined period of time. After the investigation result of the task force came out, he would be dealt with separately. The game had begun. And the outcome was still unknown. Chapter 726. The night was hazy. When Li Tianlan walked out of the conference room, he was a prisoner. One day ago he was the marshal of Zhou State. One day later he had become a prisoner of Zhou State. Nothing was more changeable than this. Throughout the meeting, Li Tianlan behaved very calmly. He frankly admitted that he was the murderer of the Qi family and gave a reason. Then he didn't say a word during the whole meeting. When the result of the meeting came out, he didn't react and calmly accepted the judgment. He would be imprisoned as a prisoner in the most mysterious and terrible desert prison in Zhou State. There was no time limit and it would be executed immediately. Zhou State Councillor, Dongqing Wudi, Deputy Minister of Army Headquarters, Zhou State Councillor, Yi Dongxing, Deputy Minister of Army Headquarters, and Hua Qingfeng, the leader of Zhou State's shadow sect, were jointly responsible for the escort mission. The helicopter had landed on the tarmac at the end of the meeting. The pilot was ready to set off at any time. Li Tianlan stood in front of the conference room and looked at the quaint, calm and solemn hidden dragon sea in his sight. He was silent for a long time. He was not surprised by the result. Southeast, wealthy families, Crown Prince and Academy. These were the four largest supergroups in Zhou State today. When they joined hands, the contrast of power between them was infinitely close, and no one could take advantage of each other. The game between the two sides could only be a stalemate when neither of them was fully prepared. A stalemate was destined to leave room for maneuver. In this way, Zhou Yunhai's plan of not offending either side became a plan that everyone could reluctantly accept, or it was a balance. Li Tianlan was imprisoned in the desert prison, the task force was set up, and Ning Qianxing was appointed as the mayor of Xianyuan City. This series of results was a balance, and both sides left room for each other. Qi Mulan's treason case was just the beginning. The investigation of the joint task force seemed to be powerful, but in fact behind the scenes, it was still the means of the four groups. If Qi Mulan was finally convicted of treason, Li Tianlan's crime would be greatly reduced and he would be free. But if it turned out that Qi Mulan's treason was not true, an indefinite detention. Unless Li Tianlan chose to commit treason, kill his way out of the desert prison, and then become the enemy of Zhou State, the most powerful country in the world. Otherwise, he would either be locked up until he died or be executed by Zhou State in secret. I hate this feeling. After a moment of silence, Li Tianlan looked at the night sky in the distance and suddenly said, "Destroying Qi Mulan's family was truly cold-blooded and brutal." Such a move seemed reckless, but there were some things that Li Tianlan could see very clearly. Because he could see it clearly, he was so calm. When the helicopter landed in front of him and was about to fly to the desert, Li Tianlan was still a little annoyed. This was because he realized that even now he still couldn't control his own fate. What would happen next? He actually had to wait for the final result of the game between the four major groups. Li Tianlan did not like this feeling. He didn't like it at all. If you do something wrong, you will have to pay the price. Li Huaqing stood beside Li Tianlan, his voice gentle. All the counselors and directors had left. In front of the huge conference room there were only two people standing. It was hard to tell whether they were enemies or friends. The pale and tired president was a little dispirited, but he still forced himself to look at Li Tianlan. I once heard someone say that the so-called freedom is not to do what you want, but not to do what you don't want to do. Obviously you don't understand this. That so-called freedom is not freedom. Li Tianlan said blandly. Li Huaqing smiled. Tianlan, your means this time are very clever. To some extent you took advantage of the bottom line of the Wang family of Beihai. But a mistake is a mistake. It's not taking advantage. I'm just guarding my own things, that's all. Li Tianlan said coldly, Tiannan is mine. Some rules can't be broken. You are not qualified to directly control the overall situation of Tiannan. Although you are very strong, you are too young, and Emperor Dong's palace is also too young. At least in the eyes of the parliament, you don't deserve such qualifications. You have the right to resist, but now this is the result of resistance, and this result will only get worse and worse. What's the point of your protection? Li Huaqing shook his head. His words were extremely straightforward. In the whole meeting, the academics completely played the leading role in demanding that Li Tianlan be punished severely. Today Li Huaqing and Li Tianlan might not be completely hostile, but the conflict of ideas between them completely broke out because of this meeting. Li Tianlan was sent to the desert prison. No matter what the result of the game was, the honeymoon period of cooperation between the giant group and the academics had officially ended. So I'm still not strong enough. Li Tianlan smiled. If I stand here today and reach the height of Wang Tianzong in Eastern Europe, maybe it won't be the result now. Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes slightly and was silent for a while. Then he said lightly, if you can reach the height of Wang Tianzong, you won't choose to do this. Although the Sword Emperor is strong, his strength is not supported by an invincible sword. In fact, for so many years, the compromise between advance and retreat of the Wang family of Beihai is the key to their current situation. Zhongzhou state is not a person's Zhongzhou state. Neither you nor Wang Tianzong can violate the bottom line of Zhongzhou state. Wang Tianzong must understand this better than you. So his Tao is not my Tao. Li Tianlan's voice was very calm. He just gave me a little inspiration. I always believe that when a person is strong enough, one person and one sword can defeat the whole world. Is this your Tao? Li Huaqing smiled sarcastically. How about it? Li Tianlan asked. It doesn't sound good. It's too strong and easy to break. Tianlan, you can't do that. Even if you can really defeat the whole world doesn't belong to you. Li Huaqing said lightly, I'm not sure what will happen to you in the future. But even if you can get out of the desert prison with your status in Zhongzhou state, you can't do what you said. I don't know about the relationship between man and sword, but between people there is only politics. At a time when everyone is talking about balance and compromise, your blindness and aggressiveness will only get you killed. He patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder and said softly with a smile, the main melody of politics is never struggle but compromise. I've seen the youthful vigor. But Tianlan, now you are far from mature in my eyes. If you have time, read more about the history of Zhongzhou state, especially the history of Beihai. You will be very interested. Li Tianlan lowered his head and thought about it. After a long while he asked, really? Li Huaqing narrowed his eyes and looked at the helicopter in the distance. He said calmly, you said that you are the overall situation of Zhongzhou state, which actually makes some sense. But I can't accept what you did last night. Comrade Li Tianlan, during the time you are in prison, I will try my best to achieve the result I want. It doesn't matter whether I succeed or fail. If I lose and you can get out of the desert prison, then you are qualified to say that you are the overall situation of Zhongzhou state. With a serious expression, he turned around and held out his hand to Li Tianlan. So, goodbye. Goodbye. Li Tianlan shook hands with him and stepped down the steps. Li Huaqing's last words contained too many meanings, and Li Tianlan had no time to think about it for a while. But in the next period of time, the last thing he lacked was time. He walked to the helicopter with steady and calm steps. Li Huaqing stood behind him and looked at his back expressionlessly. No one knew what he was thinking. When Li Tianlan was about to leave his sight, his figure suddenly stopped. Li Huaqing raised his eyebrows for a moment. In the clear night sky, Li Tianlan's voice rang in his ears. When I leave the prison, I want to see you at the gate of the prison. Li Huaqing did not respond. Li Tianlan did not wait. The roar of the helicopter's rotors sounded in the night. The flashing signal light was gradually rising. Li Tianlan looked down and his face was full of thoughts. Have a good rest for a while. Dongqing Wudi, who was personally in charge of escorting the felons, said slowly. His face was also a little tired. The president and the prime minister are undoubtedly very dissatisfied with the result tonight. It's not a good result, but it's still far from their expectations. They reluctantly accept it, but we can completely accept it. Zhongzhou state will not be too peaceful in the future. Your Highness has been showing off recently. It's good to restrain yourself for a while. Since Zhongzhou state has approved the appointment of Ning Qianqing, it will also maintain his authority when necessary. Neither the president nor the prime minister will object to this. They are all people who abide by the rules. Therefore, Your Highness's unruly behavior will make them so angry. Your Highness, you don't have to worry about Tianan. With Xianyuan City, some things in Emperor Dong's palace will be on the right track as soon as possible. When you come out, maybe it will be a different scene. Yi Dongxing smiled slightly and said calmly. Now the Southeast Group and the Giant Group were on the same side. In order to deal with the offensive of the Prince Group and the academics, the two sides would definitely strengthen cooperation. No one would have thought that the Southeast Group, which had a huge conflict with Li Tianlan, would choose to cooperate with him, while the academics, which had been cooperating with the Giant Group, would gradually drift away from them because of this meeting. There were no eternal enemies and no eternal friends. In the general trend, this sentence was almost the most reliable truth. I have nothing to worry about in Tianan. Li Tianlan shook his head. The Burning Legion had suffered heavy losses, and the Purgatory of Heaven capital could not deal with it for the time being. With the support of the Freedom Corps and Ning Qianqing as the mayor of Xianyuan City, a relatively stable environment in Tianan was beneficial to Emperor Dong's palace. It's just that Rushi. Li Tianlan hesitated for a moment. At this moment he thought of not only Dongqing Rushi but also Wang Yuetong and Qin Weibai. But Li Tianlan had no time to see all of them. You don't have to worry about Rushi. Your Aunt Bai and I will take good care of her and do our best to make her recover. Dongqing Wudi said slowly. It's good that she can wake up, Li Tianlan muttered to himself. He subconsciously took out his mobile phone and dialed Qin Weibai's number. But after thinking about it, he hung up the phone that had not been connected yet. The screen was still on. He had changed his mobile phone several times, but the wallpaper on the screen was still the picture of him and Qin Weibai snuggling together in the dormitory against the sea outside the window when he first entered the Sky Academy. Li Tianlan looked at the picture and was lost in thought. He suddenly felt that something was wrong. But he could not tell what was wrong at the moment. Chapter 727. Summer solstice had lunch and dinner in Prince Yang's mansion. When the meeting of the council was in a state of mutual hostility, the two women who could influence the general trend in the dark world now seemed to be very relaxed. Summer solstice and Qin Weibai were chatting. This was a very novel feeling for both of them. For them, it was rare for them to meet someone of the same sex whose thoughts and achievements were infinitely close to their own. It was not that there were no such people in the dark world, but the time to stand together and chat was undoubtedly a luxury. Therefore, although neither of them was particularly talkative, they got along very well after spending a day together, if they put aside the secret positions and crises. However, the body of the war god that Qin Weibai wanted was not delivered until dinner was served. Summer solstice explained that the Wang family of Beihai needed some time to prepare. Qin Weibai did not say much. Summer solstice was not in a hurry. She was not in a hurry either. Summer solstice, who had been observing Qin Weibai's mood, suddenly felt a little curious. She looked at Qin Weibai, who was quietly serving rice, and suddenly smiled. I don't know if it's an illusion, but I suddenly find that you don't care about the body of the war god very much. Or you don't care as much as I thought. Why should I care? Qin Weibai asked. You know what the body of the war god means. Li Tianlan was seriously injured now, but he didn't need the body of the war god at all. This was the last half. The Wang family of Beihai might not be able to make a second half for a long time. Leaving this half in Li Tianlan's hands meant that Li Tianlan really had one more life. To put it bluntly, even if Tianzong recovered to his peak state in the future, he would not attack Li Tianlan unless he had to. On the contrary, Li Tianlan, who has the body of the war god, is the one we need to guard against. If he breaks through to Tianzong's current level one day, he can even use this trump card to hurt Tianzong and die with him. Then he can recover with the body of the war god. Summer solstice smiled gently, but there was hesitation and unwillingness in her eyes. To some extent, this half of the body of the war god means that Emperor Dong's palace will have the initiative to face the Wang family of Beihai in the future. There is no reason for you to have such an attitude. Because it's destined to be mine. Qin Weibai brought the dishes to the table and sat opposite Summer Solstice. She said softly, others can't take them away. I don't have to worry about the gains and losses of my own things. Summer Solstice looked at Qin Weibai with a complicated look in her eyes. I don't know if my decision today is right or wrong. If Tianzong knows, I'm afraid he will blame me. She looked at Qin Weibai and asked seriously, if you were in a neutral position, how would you evaluate my decision today? This is the smartest method and the most appropriate decision. Qin Weibai took a sip of soup and said without raising her head. Really? Summer Solstice sneered. That is the truth. Qin Weibai looked into Summer Solstice's eyes. We don't need to emphasize the importance of the body of the god of war again. This would be one of the core trump cards of Emperor Dong's palace. Even if Tianlong got the body of the war god, he might not attack the Wang family of Beihai, even if Wang Tianzong returned to the state in Eastern Europe. You know this very well. The body of the god of war is something that can be inherited from generation to generation. The stronger Emperor Dong's palace is, the more deterrent it will be. If Tianlong stands at the peak in the future, a sword emperor who returns to the state of Heavenly Sun is not worth Tianlong attacking and wasting this trump card in his hand. Not worth it. Summer Solstice narrowed her eyes. I'm sorry. Qin Weibai smiled apologetically. That's not the right word. To be exact, there is no reason. The Li family and the Wang family of Beihai have been entangled for hundreds of years, but you are not Kunlun City. Even if you also played a very disgraceful role in the treason case, to be honest, neither I, Tianlong, nor even Li Honghe or Li Guangtu think that the Li family must fight with the Wang family of Beihai to death. Kunlun City must die, not because of their betrayal and despicableness, but because Kunlun City blocked the way of Emperor Dong's palace to control the special warfare system of Zhongzhou state. So, standing in this position, personal grudges are far less important than gains and losses in the overall situation. Wang Tianzong will recover and Tianlong will make a breakthrough. Even so, the two sides will not necessarily fight with each other to death. So what if Tianlong kills Wang Tianzong? It's just to vent his anger, but he will get nothing. Zhongzhou state can't watch Tianlong take everything in Beihai when he has Tianan. This is the real bottom line of Zhongzhou state. So even if Tianlong destroys the Wang family of Beihai, it will only benefit others. In this case, why should he do it? And don't forget, Yuetong is the little princess of Beihai. With this relationship, Tianlong can't even vent his anger when he destroys Beihai. He will only be more depressed. I can't get practical benefits, but I'm embarrassed. Tianlong won't do this kind of thing unless I have to. At least in my opinion, it's better for Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai to maintain a relationship of being opponents but not mortal enemies than to be entangled with each other until they die. She held the silver tableware with her white hand and knocked on the plate in front of her. She chuckled and said, "This is the reason why I want to cooperate with you. I believe Wang Tianzong will think so." The most fundamental reason why Wang Tianzong always wanted to get rid of Li Tianlong was that he thought Li Tianlong would be a threat to the Wang family of Beihai in the future. In this idea, the most important word was not a threat. It was the future. Li Tianlong would be a threat in the future. That also meant that he was nothing at the moment. He was just an ant. An ant that might cause him trouble in the future. If he could get rid of him now, he would. That was Wang Tianzong's original motive. That was all. So Wang Tianzong wanted to kill Li Tianlong for two reasons. One was that there might be trouble in the future, and the other was that Li Tianlong was too weak. If Li Tianlong could stand at the same height as Wang Tianzong, he would have Emperor Dong's palace to compete with the Wang family of Beihai. Wang Tianzong's idea would naturally change. Because then Li Tianlong would be very strong and hard to deal with. The reason was also so simple. And the simpler reason was the same as what Qin Weibai just said. In that case, even if Li Tianlong and Emperor Dong's palace were destroyed, it would be a Pyrrhic victory. They wouldn't get any benefits, but others would benefit for nothing. Instead, they would suffer great losses. Such behavior was not taken by the wise, and it was even more unnecessary. The world never belonged to one person, even if one person could defeat the whole world. The Wang family of Beihai was very strong. With the powerful strength of the Wang family of Beihai at its peak, even before Wang Tianzong was injured, it had the strength to destroy most of the superpowers in the dark world. But it didn't mean that it could be unified. Again, it was useless to mobilize a large number of people and go through a lot of trouble. To sum up, it was really not necessary to destroy the Wang family of Beihai. Of course, It didn't rule out the possibility that the Wang family of Beihai couldn't accept the gap and had to harm Emperor Dong's palace without benefiting itself. And the key was this half of the body of the war god. Li Tianlong had no psychological advantage over the Wang family of Beihai. He could look at the relationship with the Wang family of Beihai and the consequences of the entanglement between the two sides more rationally, so as to make the most rational choice. And this half of the body of the war god was the key to maintaining the balance between the two sides. I don't want to touch you, not that I can't touch you. This advantage and deterrence was what Li Tianlong had to have, and it was also what summer solstice paid for today. In fact, if there were no major accidents, such advantages and deterrence were meaningless. The body of the war god was a fusion potion. It was also the peak achievement of the Wang family of Beihai today. The so-called fusion was not the fusion of countless different potions, but the fusion of one kind of potion. 100 years ago, when the second-generation immortality potion that could surpass the original version was successfully developed, the Wang family of Beihai had discovered a very embarrassing fact through countless experiments. That was, the huge vitality contained in the immortality potion was actually not perfect to some extent. The vitality provided by the immortality potion injected into the body could indeed make the body glow with unimaginable vitality. But to put it bluntly, it was the vitality that was forcibly supporting the body. It was not the body that was maintaining the vitality. If this result continued for a long time, there would be some extremely bad changes sooner or later. Because the vitality of the immortality potion was too strong, to some extent, the immortality potion had been regarded as a life-saving thing by the peak experts of the Wang family of Beihai in times of crisis. Using the immortality potion at the first time when suffering an extremely fatal injury could quickly restore most of the injured to the peak state. But this way of using was completely different from the original intention of the immortality potion. The original purpose of the immortality potion was to simply enhance the human body's endurance and relieve a few people who were overdrawn or even on the verge of collapse because of martial arts. The person who first put forward the idea of the immortality potion was also from the Wang family of Beihai. She was the little princess of the first generation of the Wang family of Beihai. And the purpose of her research on the immortality potion was also to save her beloved man, the ancestor of the Lin clan, who was constantly overdrawn and almost faced the threat of death in the process of achieving martial arts. He was also the founder of Xuanyuantai and the Li family. This purpose was so pure. She devoted all her efforts to research and finally made the immortality potion. She succeeded. But it could also be said that she failed. Because the huge vitality of the immortality potion could indeed improve the human body's endurance to a certain extent and relieve the body's pressure. But its biggest function was to increase vitality. Such a means was just a supplement, not the expected perfect recovery. This also directly led to the immortality potion being the core and the peak technology of the Wang family of Beihai for hundreds of years, but its position had always been a little awkward. The vitality was too huge and intense. The most suitable thing for it was to quickly heal injuries. This kind of replenishment, or rather the replenishment, was too intense. If a person was really on the verge of death, or even if their body was weak to a certain extent, not only would the tremendous amount of life force not allow them to recover, but it would also cause them to explode due to the problem of too much replenishment and intense. This was the core secret of the Wang family of Beihai, and also the most embarrassing secret. The vitality of the immortality potion could not be perfectly integrated with the vitality of the human body itself. They could only drive each other. This vitality filled in could only achieve the effect of delaying. And the premise was that the user's own body would not be too weak. This also meant that if one wanted to use the immortality potion, he had to take it when the body did not actually need it. When it was really needed, he could not use it. It also meant that no matter who the user was, at the very beginning he had to waste a part of the vitality of the immortality potion. The vitality provided by the first generation of immortality potion was enough for a person to live for another 20 years. The vitality of the second generation of immortality potion was stronger than that of the first generation. But in fact, because it could not be used at the last moment, the second generation of immortality potion did not have much advantage over the original version. Most of the extra vitality was wasted. It was from that time that the Wang family of Beihai realized the most fundamental problem. That was, the immortality potion could only be filled, but it could not be integrated, let alone activated. So someone proposed two directions. One was to develop the third generation of immortality potion with the goal of completely activating the vitality of the human body. The second was to return to the original intention with integration as the goal. The integration of the immortality potion was not the pursuit of vitality, but the ultimate reinforcement of the human body's endurance, to create a perfect body that was almost immortal in all aspects. Such integration was not without clues, but it was extremely extravagant. Because this was the integration of the immortality potion and the immortality potion. It turned out that an absolutely perfect body also meant vitality beyond everyone's imagination. The finished product of this potion was almost invulnerable to any damage and any overdraft. In all aspects it was absolutely impeccable. Such a finished product could almost make up for all the shortcomings of the immortality potion. In order to commemorate the original creator and user of the immortality potion, the Wang family of Beihai gave it an unusual code name. The Body of the God of War. Chapter 728. Whether for Beihai or Xianxia state, the word God of War had an extraordinary meaning. The first God of War of Xianxia state was the founder of Xuanyuantai, the ancestor of the Lin clan. He was the first God of War of Xianxia state and the first God of War of the Wang family of Beihai. In a sense he could even be called the only God of War. In the founding history of Xianxia state, the first God of War had guarded Xianxia state for nearly 80 years and the Wang family of Beihai for nearly 80 years. 80 years. For any enemy this was enough time to make them completely desperate. It was during this time that the God of War and the first chosen one of the Wang family of Beihai joined hands and established the position of the strongest country in the world of Xianxia state. At the same time, it also established the glory of the Wang family of Beihai that lasted for hundreds of years. The Wang family of Beihai named the integration plan of the immortality potion the Body of the God of War. It was nostalgia and reverence. At the same time, it also revealed their ambition in some ways. Summer Solstice's face was a little pale. No one knew what it meant for the Wang family of Beihai to take out the only body of the God of War at this time. Qin Weibai sipped the soup. Her diet was light and exquisite. She didn't eat much for dinner. Most of the dishes on the table were prepared for summer solstice. She held the spoon in her white hand and looked at summer solstice's pale face. She suddenly said, "Has Wang Tianzong used the body of the God of War?" Summer solstice nodded and said nothing. Qin Weibai frowned and said in a tone without any emotion, "But you just said that the Wang family of Beihai hasn't broken through the technical bottleneck of the body of the God of War." Summer solstice's face became more and more pale. But it was not panic but helplessness. The integration was successful. Her voice was a little low. "At least we are on the right path and are very close to the end. The effect of the body of the God of War has been proved, but it is not perfect." Qin Weibai seemed to think of something and nodded. "How imperfect is it?" "The effect," Xia Ji said with a wry smile. "At present, we can be sure that the effect of the body of the God of War has already surpassed immortality, or even far surpassed it. However, it is still a long way from the perfect state we expected. The current body of the God of War can already reconstruct a person's body to a certain extent, but it hasn't reached the perfect state we expected. Tianzong's injuries are severe. I won't hide it from you because it's meaningless. He's tried countless ways to stabilize his injuries and suppress the sword will of the 13 floors, but all of them have failed." Qin Weibai's body shook. Xia Ji nodded. "Yes, Tianzong can't do anything about the 13 floors at the moment. His body completely collapsed 10 days ago and he is struggling on the edge of life and death. The body of the God of War is not perfect. Although the vitality it contains is much softer than that of immortality, Tianzong can only bear half of it at most. This half can help him reconstruct his body. Such a body may still seem perfect now, but it is far from the theoretical peak. Moreover, such immortality has a lot of side effects. In order to neutralize these side effects, the Wang family of Beihai has also developed several kinds of equally precious potions. Tianzong does use the body of the God of War, but it is not perfect. Now he can only accept a few tenths of a gram of the body of the God of War every day, and the remaining half is on the way. The technical bottlenecks in the body of the God of War that may be broken in the near future," she said with a wry smile. "Maybe it won't be for a long time." Qin Weibai didn't say anything. Xia Ji's words already contained a lot of things. At least one thing was certain. The body of the god of war could not break through the technical bottleneck in the near future, which meant that the Wang family of Beihai didn't have many immortality potions. At least they couldn't afford to continue the integration experiment with the immortality potions. No one knew how many immortality potions the Wang family of Beihai had wasted for this experiment. Now the stock was so scarce that it should be stuck on some precious materials. Maybe this is the best result, Qin Weibai said softly. Qin Weibai said softly. She seemed to be sighing with emotion, yet it carried a wisp of faintly discernible deep meaning. Xiaxia didn't notice it. Qin Weibai sighed softly. Summer solstice might never know that the current body of the war god should be in the most perfect state. As for the theoretical perfection that could ignore all kinds of damage, all kinds of attacks and wantonly squander power, the Wang family of Beihai would never be able to develop it. That kind of extreme perfection and power was absolutely invincible in martial arts. The simplest point was the role of force. The role of force was mutual. Even Wang Tianzong couldn't get rid of this kind of bondage completely. If Wang Tianzong's punch and sword had thousands of kilograms of power, his body would also bear such a huge force when he attacked. That was why there were different unique skills in the dark world today. The real killing move often appeared at the most critical moment. It was not that they couldn't use the same unique skill continuously, but that their bodies couldn't bear the interactive force. What was the perfect state of the body of the god of war? The potion in this theory was too powerful. Not to mention other functions, it could directly shape the body. In terms of integrating vitality to strengthen the human body's endurance, it was almost against the natural order. If Wang Tianzong really used the perfect body of the god of war in theory, his injury would completely recover and return to the peak state even better than before. That was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that in that state, Wang Tianzong didn't need other unique skills of the Wang family of Beihai. 6 paths of reincarnation. He only needed one move of 6 paths of reincarnation. When the body's endurance could ignore all overdraft and injuries, Wang Tianzong could use 6 paths of reincarnation dozens of times in a second. Who could bear it? That was really tearing the world apart and invincible in the world. Even moving mountains and filling seas was not a problem. Therefore such an effect could only be theoretical after all. Such a theory had existed for hundreds of years. The most classic was in the later years of the god of war. After detailed calculations, a world-famous doctor of genetics and human biology came up with a theory of mortals becoming gods that was still talked about in the dark world. With the combat capability of the chosen one of the first generation of the god of war, after the doctor digitized everything and made detailed calculations and a lot of analysis, he said that if the body's endurance of the god of war could be increased 90 million times, then the power the god of war could exert would almost be equal to that of God. In that state, the god of war could blow up the whole planet with one punch, and sprint at full speed could even surpass the speed of light. Increasing the body's endurance of 90 million times was equal to increasing the power by hundreds of millions of times. Such a possibility did exist, but only in theory. In fact, it was impossible to achieve the perfect effect of the body of the god of war by 2 times, let alone 90 million times. The Wang family of Beihai couldn't develop such a potion. The reason why Qin Weibai understood this was that she had seen a possibility that was very close to, or even closer to, perfection than the current body of the god of war. For so many years, perhaps the Wang family of Beihai had never known what kind of energy the body of the god of war that they had developed actually was. Qin Weibai was very clear. To be exact, the energy that strengthened the body was vitality. It was far more vitality than the immortality potion could provide, enough to bring people back from the dead. To be precise, it was the dragon vein. The dragon vein of Xianxia state. It was not the dragon vein that Li Tianlan was carrying now. It was the dragon vein that was strong enough to protect the rise and fall of a country in the future. The vitality evolved from the huge luck could at least double the body's endurance when Li Tianlan set foot on the peak. But this was also the limit, and the limit that was closest to the perfect state of the body of the god of war. As for the 2 times that the body of the god of war had been pursuing, it was simply impossible. At least within hundreds of years, such a technical bottleneck could not be broken. The Wang family of Beihai was doomed to not develop the body of the god of war they expected. There was no technology, no time, and not enough luck. Qin Weibai's eyes were a little complicated. Li Tianlan, who had the dragon vein, did not need the body of the god of war at all. So her deal with the Wang family of Beihai this time was a complete blessing. Hurried but light footsteps suddenly sounded. Horsewoman knocked on the door and whispered, "Boss, someone from the Wang family of Beihai is here." Qin Weibai suddenly lost interest and said lazily, "Let him in." The door was pushed open. A middle-aged man with a serious and old-fashioned look came in. He solemnly held a small square box in his hands, bowed slightly to summer solstice and whispered, "Madam, this is what you want." Qin Weibai's pupils contracted slightly. The small square box was completely made of alloy. It looked inconspicuous, but she knew what it was. The Wang family of Beihai trusted someone to deliver this thing, not because the delivery person was not simple but because the box was not simple. "It's yours." Summer Solstice pushed the box in front of Qin Weibai and whispered, "Now tell me what I want to know." "The password." Qin Weibai said calmly, "I don't dare to open this thing without the password." She looked at Summer Solstice and said with a soft smile, "The power of this thing is enough to make the blocks within a few kilometers recognize it as a dead zone." Horsewoman's face suddenly changed and she subconsciously approached Qin Weibai. "It's useless." Qin Weibai shook her head. "Once this box explodes, even the domain of the invincible realm will be useless, not to mention you. There is a very special battery in it, which is its energy system. It is called a radioisotope battery." "Horsewoman, do you know what it is?" Horsewoman's face suddenly turned pale for a moment and she murmured, "Nuclear battery." Qin Weibai looked at Summer Solstice with a faint smile. Summer Solstice took a deep breath. She did not say the password but opened the box herself. In the vibrant blue light, Qin Weibai checked the things and finally took out all the things and pushed the box back. Summer Solstice answered a phone call halfway, and her eyes became a little strange. "There is news from the parliament," she said slowly. Qin Weibai studied the body of the god of war in her hand and said yes. "Ning Qianqing's appointment has been approved, but Li Tianlan will be imprisoned in the desert prison without a time limit," Summer Solstice said. Qin Weibai still said yes and simply said, "I gave him a list." "Is this your purpose?" Summer Solstice asked curiously, "Using the resources of the desert prison to make up for the flaws in the structure of Emperor Dong's palace? That's a good move, really good calculation." "There are not so many calculations." Qin Weibai shook her head. "I just took advantage of the situation, that's all." Summer Solstice looked at her and was silent for a long time. "What's wrong?" Horsewoman took another box and Qin Weibai put the body of the god of war in it and asked. "I don't know, it's an indescribable feeling." Summer Solstice shook her head. "I always thought we were the same kind of woman, but now looking at your behavior it seems a little different. If it were me, even if Tianzong was in prison, even if I knew nothing would happen, I would see him before he left, because I would miss him in the days to come." Summer Solstice said seriously, "But you give me the feeling. You are too rational. I even suspect that you are not Qin Weibai." Horsewoman's eyes suddenly narrowed for a moment. "I am Qin Weibai," Qin Weibai said coldly. Summer Solstice looked into her eyes seriously. At this moment what she saw in her eyes was not panic, but a kind of extremely cold anger. Summer Solstice smiled a little playfully. "You seem to have thought of something interesting?" Qin Weibai asked. "Oh." Summer Solstice smiled and shook her head. "That's a pity," Qin Weibai said faintly, "but I can remind you of one thing. You care about the survival of the Wang family of Beihai, so this matter is very meaningful." "What is it?" Summer Solstice frowned slightly. Qin Weibai gently knocked on the table and said calmly, "Did you see the Xianyuan sword on Mount Dibing?" "Yes." Summer Solstice frowned and nodded. "That's why I came to you." "Did you really see it?" Qin Weibai asked softly. Her voice was very pleasant, but the slightly slow and light tone revealed a kind of inexplicable weirdness at this time. Summer Solstice's scalp went numb for no reason. Qin Weibai's voice continued, very light, very slow, and seemed to carry a chilly wind. "Did you really see it? Did you see the Xianyuan sword?" Summer Solstice's face turned blue. She looked at Qin Weibai. Qin Weibai also looked at her. There was only depth in her perfect and dreamy eyes. The chilly wind seemed to have dissipated, but the extreme chill had penetrated into Summer Solstice's bone marrow in a short time. She suddenly understood the meaning of Qin Weibai's words. "Yes." Her voice was a little dry. "I saw it." Qin Weibai laughed. Summer Solstice really understood. On Mount Dibing what she saw was indeed the Xianyuan sword. She really saw it. But the most important thing was that when she saw the Xianyuan sword, the coldness of 9 states of the Wang family of Beihai was still on Mount Dibing. So was the sword. Where was the person? Without the person, where did the sword come from? Summer Solstice finally figured out the problem she had been ignoring. She also understood why Lin Fengting wanted to say so much but stopped. She suddenly thought of the patient Lin Fengting mentioned to her at that time. She thought of the half-body of the god of war in front of her. Life and death. Her face became extremely serious in an instant. Chapter 729. The atmosphere in the restaurant suddenly became extremely depressing. Summer Solstice sat stiffly in her seat, thinking about some major issues with a dignified look. Qin Weibai waved her hand. Horsewoman left with the researchers of the Wang family of Beihai. The evening wind blew in, blowing the layer of vague clouds around Summer Solstice, and her hair gently rose with the wind. Summer Solstice came to her senses, took a deep breath, looked at Qin Weibai and said in a low voice, "Thank you for reminding me." Qin Weibai shook her head. She knew that she had revealed a lot of things that she shouldn't have today. She didn't know whether it was right or wrong, but for the half-body of war god, it was absolutely worth it. "You don't seem nervous?" Qin Weibai looked at Summer Solstice and asked. The Wang family of Beihai has paid the price it should pay. In the face of the future, it's meaningless to be overly nervous now. Summer Solstice shook her head. At this moment she was extremely dignified and calm. "I ask you for help today, but it doesn't mean that the Wang family of Beihai is a humble family. No one in the dark world dares to define us as humble. For hundreds of years the Wang family of Beihai will give in and compromise, but no one can really make us bow our heads. Not in the future, not in Zhongzhou state." Her voice was quiet and tranquil with unquestionable strength and calmness. She could come to see Qin Weibai for the crisis of the Wang family of Beihai, and she could wait for more than 2 hours in the alternation of night and dawn, but she would not beg on behalf of the Wang family of Beihai. This was the pride and strength of the Wang family of Beihai. She could use all means to save the crisis she could see, but it didn't mean that the Wang family of Beihai didn't have the courage to bear everything. In the simple ancestral teaching of the Wang family of Beihai, the first paragraph was the simplest, but it was this sentence that helped the Wang family of Beihai go through countless crises in hundreds of years. Believe in your own strength. In a real desperate situation, the strength that can be held in your own hands is the most effective weapon. As the descendants of the Wang family of Beihai, you should have your own persistence and courage. When you put down your persistence, it is equivalent to giving up Beihai. I hope that my descendants can remember one thing. No matter what kind of desperate situation you face, please do not give up the courage to fight. Behind you are the beautiful land and rivers of the North Sea province of 160,000 square kilometers, and the millions of people who need your protection. They will not be your burden, but the confidence of our Wang family of Beihai to challenge everything. The Wang family of Beihai would rather die in glory than live in disgrace. Summer Solstice took a deep breath. She stood up. The clouds shrouding her body slowly dispersed. In the light of the restaurant, a beautiful and awe-inspiring face appeared, quiet and dignified with inviolable coldness and pride. No matter when, the Wang family of Beihai has the courage to face all challenges. Qin Weibai leaned against the chair and was silent for a while. Then she said calmly, "I understand. This is the pride or madness of the Wang family of Beihai. This is your foundation, and it can even be said to be the key for you to get to where you are today. At present you seem to be successful." "Seems." Summer Solstice frowned. "No one will doubt the method to make themselves successful, at least not before they fail. Your pride is the key to your success, but it will also be the key to your fall into the abyss. I would like to hear the details." Summer Solstice narrowed her eyes and looked solemn. "Only Zhongzhou state." Qin Weibai's voice was extremely calm. This was originally just a deal. She was not obliged to help the Wang family of Beihai. Summer Solstice nodded. "What do you think of the relationship between Zhongzhou state and Beihai now? At this stage, the game between Zhongzhou state and the north is inevitable. The game of the sea is inevitable. For hundreds of years, the Wang family of Beihai has been too aloof. Almost every president wants to let Beihai province return completely to increase the national strength of Zhongzhou state. Now the Wang family of Beihai, which has internal and external troubles, has lost its spiritual leader. This is the best opportunity." Qin Weibai looked at summer solstice. The best opportunity. Not only Zhongzhou State thinks so, but everyone thinks so. Even you think that this is the biggest crisis that the Wang family of Beihai has encountered at present. This is the truth. Summer solstice said calmly, everyone can see this clearly. Do you have any suggestions? Do you want to win? Qin Weibai asked. Of course. Summer solstice replied without hesitation, and her tone was extremely decisive. This idea itself is wrong, Qin Weibai said calmly. Qin Weibai said indifferently, you can't win. The Wang family of Beihai has no chance of winning this game. This mentality of pursuing victory is also the pride of the Wang family of Beihai. But such pride will completely destroy the Wang family of Beihai. Don't think about winning. It's impossible. The only thing you need to do now is not to lose. This is the only advice I can give you. Why do you think that the Wang family of Beihai can't win? Summer solstice was not angry. Her voice grew calmer. Because you are not capable enough. Qin Weibai said bluntly, this kind of ability is multifaceted. Your body is not enough to fully support the peak combat power of the Wang family of Beihai. Without Wang Tianzong, your existence can't replace Wang Tianzong's position in the hearts of the people of Beihai. Beihai does have many trump cards. With your temperament, I won't be surprised even if you really use nuclear weapons. But what you have, Zhongzhou State also has. If you really want to destroy everything, you can't do it. Most of your missiles will be intercepted before they can even enter the territory of Zhongzhou State. If it really goes to that step, the only ending for the Wang family of Beihai can only be destruction. If it really goes to that step, it will be a war. Even if Zhongzhou State can win, it can't easily have such determination. Summer solstice said calmly. So this is the only thing you can rely on. Qin Weibai's voice was light and without the slightest anger. The only thing you can rely on is that Zhongzhou State doesn't dare to easily break out a war. This is the foundation of this game. This foundation is betting on Zhongzhou State's determination. Zhongzhou State doesn't want to do it and doesn't dare to do it at all are two different concepts. Under such circumstances, it's completely a pipe dream for you to want to win. Summer solstice's face suddenly became a little ugly. She snorted coldly and did not speak. Retreat or even bow your head is your only choice. Qin Weibai said calmly, you can be strong but your strength is based on concessions. Between strength and concessions, the Wang family of Beihai needs to find a new balance and create a new situation. Then in this situation you need to strive for stability, delay the situation and drag it into a mess. This should be the limit of your ability. And then, Summer Solstice said coldly, Wang Tianzong has begun to use the body of the god of war. At that time he should almost recover. At that time he will naturally come out to clean up the mess. During this process, to put it bluntly, if you want to delay it, you can only delay it. Is this your speculation? Summer Solstice said tentatively. I can give you some evidence you want. Qin Weibai said calmly. Summer Solstice was in a daze. After a long time she smiled bitterly. I'm afraid that by that time, it will be difficult for Tianzong to control the situation. Qin Weibai looked at her strangely and did not speak. I think I have another choice at the moment. Summer Solstice sat down again. The Wang family of Beihai can choose to join forces with Emperor Dong's palace. That's what you want to see, isn't it? What I hope is that Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai will not become mortal enemies, because it doesn't make sense. Qin Weibai's voice was very cold. But this is not something I can decide. I will try to persuade Tianlong. Only Tianlong can decide how the relationship between Emperor Dong's palace and the Wang family of Beihai will develop in the future. As for joining forces, it's impossible. At least for now, Emperor Dong's palace can't advance or retreat with the Wang family of Beihai. I can tell you clearly that before there is a clear result in the Wang family of Beihai, Emperor Dong's palace will not join forces with the Wang family of Beihai. A clear result, Summer Solstice muttered to herself. Qin Weibai looked at her quietly, politely and calmly. The final result, what will happen to Tianzong? After a long time Summer Solstice asked softly. Her voice was a little trembling. I can't see the future, so I can't give you an answer. Qin Weibai said calmly. What do you think? Summer Solstice's voice was extremely persistent. Qin Weibai chuckled, but there was a flash of complexity in her eyes. She looked at Summer Solstice with some envy, some sympathy and some melancholy. He will die. Qin Weibai said, but he will die a worthy death. He is willing. Summer Solstice's body suddenly shook for a moment. Qin Weibai stood up, looked at Summer Solstice and said, that's all for today. Goodbye. Summer Solstice silently turned around and walked out of the restaurant. Qin Weibai watched her back disappear from her sight, sat down again and thought silently. No one knew what she was thinking about. Horsewoman came in and said softly, Boss, the sordid information has been given to her. Qin Weibai said yes, thought for a moment and said, where is Tianlan? The news came 5 minutes ago. The helicopter has left Yuzhou. Horsewoman said, if we go after him now we can still intercept him. No need. Qin Weibai shook her head and said quietly, prepare the plane. We're going to Switzerland. With the body of the god of war. Horsewoman raised her eyebrows and said, oh. Qin Weibai walked to the window and looked at the night sky in the distance. She suddenly said, Horsewoman, what do you think a person's strongest state and strongest life will be like? Horsewoman shook her head blankly. I don't know. Probably like Wang Tianzong. Not enough. Qin Weibai shook her head. Sword Emperor is known to be invincible in the world, but his life is too tiring after all. Even if Tianlan doesn't appear, his life is too tiring. She slowly turned around. I think of 4 words. What? Horsewoman was a little confused. No plan in this life. Qin Weibai laughed. That's probably a person's strongest life. No plan in this life, Horsewoman murmured a few times, and her eyes gradually lit up with some yearning. No plan in this life. There were only 2 kinds of people who could do this. One was a reckless man. They could be stupid and ignore any consequences. As for the other, he could completely ignore any consequences. I don't agree with Summer Solstice. Qin Weibai slowly said, they always think that even if one person can defeat the whole world, it is impossible to have the whole world. They may be right. One person really can't do it. But 2 people, it is not impossible. Qin Weibai glanced at Horsewoman and ordered, prepare the plane. We'll leave immediately. Chapter 730. As the most mysterious and terrifying enemy in Zhongzhou State, the desert prison was a real impasse. It was the most heavily guarded place in Zhongzhou State, where the most important prisoners of Zhongzhou State were held. The prisoners in the prison were men and women, old and young, including all races. It was no exaggeration to say that every prisoner in the desert prison had a different meaning for Zhongzhou State. The prisoners here might not have committed the most heinous crimes, but they were definitely the most important ones. For example, senior spies from other countries, top-secret researchers who defected, traitors of Zhongzhou State, giants who had mastered countless secrets and were once influential in a certain field, and intelligence officers of other countries or superpowers. They would not die before their value was squeezed out. But because of their danger, Zhongzhou State would not put them in ordinary prisons. The desert prison was therefore established. It was a place where countless top criminals and conspirators gathered. Any prisoner from it, no matter who he was, at least he would not be an ordinary person. The prison was built in the center of the desert. With the prison as the center, there was no water source within hundreds of kilometers. Such a harsh terrain could almost prevent most people who tried to escape or come to raid the prison from having any idea that they should not have. At the beginning of the year there were nearly 300 prisoners in the desert prison, but there were less than 1,000 jailers who were responsible for guarding these 300 prisoners, including 2 superiors of the Thundershocking realm and none of the half-step invincible realm. It was known as the most heavily guarded base. This kind of power sounded incredible, but Li Tianlan knew very well how powerful and terrifying the desert prison was behind this seemingly empty defense force. In the past 60 years, after the superpowers in the Dark World had worked hard to find the location of the desert prison, they had carried out nearly 20 jailbreaking operations here. The largest one was led by an invincible realm expert. Nearly 1,000 elites from various superpowers gathered together, and blood flowed like a river in the desert. Such a battle could be said to be a small war. However, since the establishment of the desert prison, no prisoner had succeeded in escaping, and no force had succeeded in breaking out of the prison. All the people who invaded the desert prison had never crossed the border of Zhongzhou State, or even escaped from the desert. Including the superior of the invincible realm who had attacked the desert prison many years ago, he was eventually killed less than 30 kilometers away from the desert prison. Near the desert prison that seemed to be defenseless, there were two absolutely confidential military bases in Zhou State. One was a fully automated reconnaissance base, and the other was a semi-automated Air Force base. The former was codenamed Sky Eye, while the latter was codenamed Sky Arrow. The Heavenly Eye was the main military base responsible for guarding the daily security of the desert prison. It was also the top reconnaissance system in Zhou State. In the past 100 years, Zhou State had invested a lot of money in the Heavenly Eye system. Thanks to the efforts of the first generation of researchers, the third generation of the Heavenly Eye system had been developed. Today, all the major theaters of operations in Zhou State, including the Border Control Corps and Special Services, were equipped with the Heavenly Eye reconnaissance system. The Heavenly Eye system of the desert prison could be said to be the strongest among all the Heavenly Eye systems in Zhou State. It was not because of the importance of the desert prison. It was because this was a desert. It was the simplest, most straightforward and most inexplicable reason. This was a desert. Therefore, the Heavenly Eye system here was the most terrifying. The third eye was connected to most of the military satellites of Zhou State, with the most advanced scanning radar. In the reconnaissance mode, the reconnaissance radius of this system was nearly 200 kilometers. And this was a desert. There was no city, no neighborhood, no human habitation, only thousands of miles of yellow sand. Under such circumstances, the Heavenly Eye military base relied on the Heavenly Eye system and was equipped with countless of the most advanced firepower weapons. Laser weapons, electromagnetic weapons, infrasonic tracking cannons, demon eye bombs. Within the detection radius of the core of the Heavenly Eye, almost no creature could escape the detection of the Heavenly Eye. In the face of enemy invasion, the Heavenly Eye could automatically start all the weapon systems in the military base in a few tenths of a second. This was a real full-scale firepower. This was a desert. Without having to worry about accidental injuries or damage, the Heavenly Eye system could rely on its absolute firepower advantage to directly pour its firepower over every inch of land within 100 miles in less than a minute. No one could survive this kind of indiscriminate bombardment. Not the invincible realm, not the peak of the invincible realm. In the face of this unscrupulous and incessant lethality, even Wang Tianzong in the Eastern Europe period could not survive. No matter how strong the invincible realm was, there was a limit. And in this kind of unrestricted terrain, modern heavy firepower weapons had the majesty to sanction everything. Even if the Heavenly Eye system failed and the fish that escaped the net left this range, the elite air force of the Sky Arrow base could deal with all the sudden situations in the fastest time. With the existence of two military bases, the defense of the desert prison was completely unsolvable. Among all the military bases in Zhou State, the base of the desert prison might have the least number of people, but its destructive power could be said to be the strongest. The warden of the desert prison was also the highest officer of the two military bases and had the highest authority, so he had always been awarded the rank of lieutenant general. Their strength might not be the best, but in the desert the warden of the prison was the real master, even the only master. The helicopter whistled over the yellow sand in the heat wave. In the distance was a desolate and vast desert. The outline of the prison was faintly visible. Li Tianlong looked quietly into the distance and suddenly asked, "Who is the warden of the desert prison now?" "Lieutenant General Xiaomahai." Dongqing Wudi said, "A few months ago he came to the army headquarters to report to me." "Xiaomahai?" Li Tianlong thought about it and shook his head. "I haven't heard of him." Dongqing Wudi and Yi Dongxing looked at each other and smiled helplessly. Not only Li Tianlong hadn't heard of him, but even Dongqing Wudi, who had just met him a few months ago, might not have remembered Xiaomahai's name if he hadn't checked the information before coming. There was no doubt about the powerful defense of the desert prison. The authority of the warden of the desert prison to dominate this desert was also beyond doubt. But for any warden, even for any general in Zhou State, the position of the warden was not a good one. This position was generally assigned to the place where the general was excluded by the major groups, failed in the competition for a key position, or offended someone. There was no future, no benefits, and it was a deserted place. Any word used here was truly appropriate. He managed hundreds of prisoners with special identities who could not be treated casually, and no one came to visit him. He led nearly 1,000 miscellaneous soldiers who had no combat power at all. He stayed in the prison all year round to bask in the sun and eat sand. He also had to regularly accept the strict examination from the army headquarters, the Ministry of State Security, and Kunlun City. He guarded a pile of high-tech weapons that ran all year round but were basically unused. Every year, in order to maintain the funds for the operation of the base, he had to go to the army headquarters from time to time to pretend to be a grandson. This was the warden of the lieutenant general level of the desert prison. Who the hell wanted to be such a warden? This kind of position with the rank of general was not even as comfortable as most of the grassroots officers. There was no doubt that in the hearts of the generals of Xianxia state, the position of the warden of the desert prison was the most difficult general-level position in the whole Xianxia state. It would be good if such a person was not regarded as a joke. Who could remember his name? Minister, I want a copy of this person's detailed information. Li Tianlan thought for a moment and said softly. No problem. Dongqing Wudi nodded. I'll ask someone to extract the file. Li Tianlan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked thoughtfully at the desert prison that was getting closer and closer. In the eyes of others, the warden of the desert prison might be the most difficult position, but to him this position was extraordinary. To him, this warden could even be said to be the most valuable person he would come into contact with in the next period of time. Chapter 731. The helicopter landed slowly in front of the gate that looked a little old in the desert prison. Xiao Mohai, the warden, and two deputy wardens greeted them with some middle-level staff in the prison. The desert was full of wind and sand. The yellow sand was raging, almost bending the warden's waist. The rank of lieutenant general of Xianxia state shone under the scorching sun. The warden, who looked nearly 60 years old, stooped and trotted all the way. His speed in the thunder-shocking realm almost left the two deputies and others behind. But Xiao Mohai seemed to be unaware of it. When he was still far away from the helicopter, he had already stretched out his hands with a smile on his face, looking humble and respectful. Hello, Minister Dongqing. Welcome to the desert for inspection. Dongqing Wudi smiled indifferently and shook hands with him casually. This kind of lieutenant general who had an empty military rank but could hardly play any role, was indeed not taken seriously by him. He pulled out his hand, looked calm and said righteously, General Xiao, I'm not here to inspect the work. Yesterday there was a vicious case of extermination in Yuzhou City. Li Tianlan, the former marshal of the Special Warfare System, is a major suspect in the case. The parliament decided to imprison Li Tianlan in the desert prison. I'm here to escort the suspect. The desert prison is your territory. The suspect has been sent here. I hope you can fulfill your duty and keep a close watch on him. If anything goes wrong, Xianxia state will hold you responsible. Do you understand? Yes, Minister, I understand. Xiao Mohai seemed to want to salute, but he felt awkward when he raised his palm halfway. During the 3 years as the warden of the desert prison, everything he had encountered had almost completely crushed his arrogance and strength of character. He laughed at himself, put down his palm and kept nodding and bowing to Dongqing Wudi skillfully and naturally. Dongqing Wudi nodded and patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder. This is Li Tianlan, the suspect I'm going to escort this time. Xiao Mohai quickly looked up at Li Tianlan. Young. This was his first feeling. Ordinary. This was his second feeling. Extraordinary. When the third feeling appeared, all his impressions suddenly solidified. He was extraordinary. The young man who had been a marshal and was now a prisoner, stood beside Dongqing Wudi. His eyes were calm and deep, but he stood there without any sense of existence. Under the scorching sun and the raging sandstorm, he stood there like an illusory shadow. But once Xiao Mohai's attention was focused on him, this illusory shadow suddenly became extremely real. Under that seemingly ordinary appearance, Xiao Mohai felt an indescribable peerless elegance. It was an indescribable feeling. Xiao Mohai could not describe it. He was just standing there, but he had fused with the whole world in the unseen world. Li Tianlan took the initiative to extend his hand and said quietly, Hello, General Xiao. Hello, Your Highness. Welcome, Your Highness. No, Your Highness, that's not what I meant. Hello, Your Highness, hello. Xiao Mohai's smile grew brighter, but halfway through his words his face suddenly changed. Facing Li Tianlan, he didn't know how to phrase his words. His head was covered in sweat, and his waist seemed to be clockwork as he kept bowing to Li Tianlan. Li Tianlan smiled and seemed to find it interesting. Xiao Mohai became more and more nervous, and his hand holding Li Tianlan trembled slightly. Although he was sent to the desert prison, he was still a lieutenant general of Xianxia state. And as the warden, How could he not know the details of the prisoners he was about to lock up? Before Li Tianlan came to the prison, Xiao Mohai had already known Li Tianlan's details through the outside world. He also roughly understood the reason why he came to the desert prison. To be honest, the moment he saw Li Tianlan's information, Xiao Mohai's scalp was a little numb, and his heart sank to the bottom. Before he was sent here, Li Tianlan's name had already been famous in Zhou state. But at that time, Li Tianlan was just an extremely talented young man who was the successor of the Li family. For more than 3 years, Xiao Mohai was discouraged and didn't pay much attention to the outside world. At this time, when he looked at Li Tianlan's information again, he found that the outside world had already changed dramatically. Li Tianlan was still very young. But no one saw him as a young man with a bright future. He had never entered the Invincible Realm, but he had killed more than one Invincible Realm expert. He led the Snowdance Corps to conquer 5 countries in Eastern Europe, became the Palace Lord of Emperor East's palace, established Xianyuan City, swept away the Wang family of Beihai, and was even likely to become the master of Tiannan in the future. Such a figure was now strongly supported by the giant group. Even Wei Kunlun of Mount Shu had joined the Samsara Palace in a high-profile manner. He couldn't afford to offend him. This was the first thought that came to Xiao Mohai's mind when he saw Li Tianlan's information. Such a Li Tianlan was definitely not a figure he could afford to offend. After learning about Li Tianlan's past, he also understood why Li Tianlan appeared here. In this way he was even more frightened. He killed Qi Mulin's family, but he was taken as a suspect and escorted to the desert prison. Just by the identity of the suspect, Xiao Mohai smelled countless knives and swords. He had committed such a serious crime, but he was still only a suspect. Obviously, some people in Zhou state wanted to deal with the case strictly, but there were also people who wanted to protect Li Tianlan. In the case that neither side could do anything to the other for the time being, they each took a step back, so Li Tianlan became a suspect. The moment he figured out this problem, Xiao Mohai had already decided his attitude toward Li Tianlan. He had to accept it. But he couldn't treat him as an ordinary prisoner. If he did so, he would offend the giant group first. And in Xiao Mohai's view, Li Tianlan came to the desert prison only for a temporary period. It could even be said that he came to avoid the limelight. Such a figure, the future heavenly son, Li Tianlan, could be said to be the general trend. It was impossible for such a figure to be trapped in the desert prison until he died. After 3 or 5 months, at most a year or 2, when the limelight passed, Li Tianlan would go out. After he went out, naturally it would be a situation of boundless sea and sky. How could Xiao Mohai offend such a person to death? How dare he offend him to death? Worship him. Worship him as an ancestor. General Xiao seems to be too nervous. Yi Dongxing, who was beside him, smiled. Xiao Mohai was stunned and then noticed the god of army of Zhou state. He narrowed his eyes and nodded, saying, "Hello, General Yi." To Dongqing Wudi he used honorifics. To Li Tianlan, the suspect, he called him Your Highness, nodded and bowed, and also used honorifics. To Yi Dongxing his tone was extremely calm, even indifferent. Yi Dongxing raised his eyebrows, smiled indifferently and didn't say much. He could understand Xiao Mohai's hostility and his excessive enthusiasm for Dongqing Wudi and Li Tianlan. In fact, the reason why Xiao Mohai was sent to the desert prison was the result of the game between the Southeast group and the giant group. Before he was transferred to the desert prison, Xiao Mohai was the commander of a group army in Zhou state. That group army might not be the trump card of Zhou state, but in the main force, it had always ranked first. Xiao Mohai himself did not have a strong backer. He could serve as the commander of that group army. First, his strength close to the peak of the thundershocking realm made him qualified. Second, under the special background, all parties couldn't reach a good result after weighing the pros and cons, so they could only send Xiao Mohai to make the transition. More than 3 years ago, Xiao Mohai actually wanted to get close to the giant group and took action. He made positive comments on the Border Control Corps many times in public. At that time, it was almost certain that Dongqing Wudi would leave the Border Control Corps and enter the main army headquarters. The internal game in the military was extremely fierce. Xiao Mohai used all means to merge the group army he led into the Border Control Corps. In this way he officially stepped onto the big ship of the giant group. Although he didn't see Dongqing Wudi at that time, he also visited many big shots of the giant group and got relatively positive responses. However, when his operation was about to succeed, A major general of the Southeast group came out of nowhere and directly took away his position. All of Xiao Mohai's dreams were completely shattered, and he was transferred to the desert prison. It wasn't that the giant group didn't fight for this matter, but in the end, it was no match for the Southeast group. In addition, Xiao Mohai himself wasn't a direct descendant of the giant group, and Dongqing Wudi had to pay a lot of bargaining chips to get the position. At that time, the giant group, whose biggest demand was to let Dongqing Wudi enter the army headquarters, naturally wouldn't be too insistent. That was why Xiao Mohai had gone through so many ups and downs in the past 3 years. As one of the leaders of the Southeast group, Xiao Mohai naturally didn't have a good impression of Yi Dongxing. He didn't even bother to keep up appearances. As a lieutenant general, he already had the worst treatment in the desert. How bad could it be? No matter how powerful Yi Dongxing was, could he beat him to the end? Even if he did, it would be a good thing for Xiao Mohai. In the past 3 years, Xiao Mohai could be said to have suffered enough. If he could leave this damn place, even if he had to take off his military uniform, he would consider it. Now the arrival of Li Tianlan was undoubtedly a turning point. This made Xiao Mohai see an opportunity, a huge opportunity, a chance to make a comeback. Li Tianlan had the full support of the giant group. When he was in the desert prison, the eyes of the giant group would inevitably focus on the desert prison, and by the way, they would pay attention to him, the lieutenant general of Zhongzhou state who once wanted to get close to the giant group. As long as he served Li Tianlan well, when Li Tianlan left the prison, he had a great chance to be taken out by Li Tianlan. Xiao Mohai never belittled himself. In the desert prison he was a grandson. But when he left here, his strength, which was close to the peak of the thunder-shocking realm, was enough for him to play on any occasion. Moreover, it was the cooperation between the giant group and the Southeast group to protect Li Tianlan this time. If Li Tianlan was willing to take him away, the Southeast group might not stop him. In this way, as long as Li Tianlan was satisfied, his affairs would be promising. General Xiao, you're too polite. I'm a prisoner. In the future, I'll have to rely on you to take care of me in the prison. Li Tianlan said with a smile, his tone clear and light. Of course I will. Rest assured, Your Highness. If you have any needs, I promise to meet them. Xiao Mohai wiped the sweat on his forehead and glanced at Li Tianlan. The two of them looked at each other slightly and were deeply satisfied with each other's attitude. This seemed to be a good start. That was what both of them thought. However, Xiao Mohai thought about the beginning of his comeback. Li Tianlan thought about the beginning of the rapid maturity of Emperor Dong's palace. Li Tianlan chuckled and held Xiao Mohai's hand with more strength. Your Highness, please. Xiao Mohai bowed deeply, his posture becoming more and more respectful.